The white demon Saint Chenbai stood at the castle gate with his head bowed. The Lady of All Darkness, towering over him, was upset by his failure in this mission and ordered him to perish. He begged her to give him a chance because he had done so much for her. But the man had no right to ask for a second chance, and he, along with the castle, would be swallowed up by impenetrable darkness. He had completed over 100 missions for her, but she had erased him for just one mistake. Or maybe this fate befell him because he is a pathetic person. He couldn't accept it at all. Consumed by darkness, he wished only for her death. And he didn't retreat until the very end. But suddenly he woke up alive and found himself in a dorm. And then he remembered his hourglass, the rarest object he had ever encountered, and which had been with him for 20 years. The sand in them had always been at the bottom, even when he turned the clock over, but now it was falling, and time was turning back. He returned on June 5, 2032, 10 days before receiving the universal assignment and beginning his journey. In 10 days, 90% of the world's population will perish. The dead will turn into zombies and other evil spirits, and modern weapons will not cope, and the tragedy will happen in just one night. However, along with the widespread extermination of humanity, some will awaken supernatural abilities, and many magical things will be scattered throughout the world. Some of them belong personally to one of the gods of the new universe, but the gods cannot directly influence the world, so they find servants who carry out their tasks. In his previous life, due to his weaknesses, Chenbai had great difficulty in coming under the protection of Erlos. He carried out all her tasks just to get the opportunity to improve his position, but he couldn't even imagine that one failed mission would ruin all his work. This time he had to become stronger so as not to rely on the gods. 10 years after the incident, someone found the reason for the ability upgrade. In his past life, he had resistance to viruses. In one of the hospitals, he overheard the medical staff talking about a patient with strange symptoms. Having made his way into his room, Chenbai realized that it was definitely a zombie. To level up, he had to rely on this zombie. The fluid he took from his vein should have been enough to awaken the ability. There was no one around now, but the staff needed to stay for the night. If his theory is wrong, he will simply die here. But he didn't care, because after decades of stagnation, he now had at least some chance of progress. But it is better to die now than to become a weakling. He fell into darkness again and met Erlos. She urged him not to resist and to accept the darkness into himself and become a part of it, because that is what is suitable for a pathetic person. But he could not give up and promise to destroy her. And so his transformation began. People who saw him were overcome with indescribable horror, but he only answered them that he would go and wash himself. Looking at himself in the mirror, he realized that the zombie virus had not killed him. Now he was curious to see how much the ability level would increase after awakening. And then he heard the voice of the universe, which congratulated him on gaining the status of a pioneer and on waking up earlier. When he woke up, the first thing he did was look at his characteristics. Now he had the divine status of King of Viruses. The King of Viruses was the strongest ability of the virus classes. With its help, one can absorb genetic modification and even create their own viruses. But for now, he could only absorb viruses, and only at a very close range, and he needed more viruses to unlock his ability. The hospital was the best place to find pathogens, but when he approached the doors, he saw patients running out with zombies chasing them. Everyone was shouting that the end of the world had come and that they were being attacked by zombies. And then Chenbai remembered what happened in his past life. It looks like it was her, which means he arrived on time. And he rushed towards the zombie with all his might. Having knocked him to the ground, he absorbed his viruses. After Chenbai absorbed the virus from one zombie, he is happy that there are so many of them here. Meanwhile, several zombies are breaking into a toilet stall on the 4th floor. In that very booth, the blonde man is trying with all his might to hold the doors open. You can see a creepy monster man pounding on the door on the other side. Besides the guy, there is a girl in a medical uniform sitting on the floor in the booth and whispering the name of Director Liu. Something happens to Liu and he turns around, intending to enjoy the girl one last time. A hole appears in the door with a crunch, through which a zombie reaches out to him. The director cannot believe that the end has come. As the zombie breaks in and moves towards the director, he grabs the nurse and throws her to the monster, screaming that he will live. The zombie runs after him, and Liu Feng throws himself out of the 4th floor window along with the monster. A few minutes later, Chen appears next to the girl, having taken the virus from almost all of the infected. He looks at the girl and sees that she was only recently bitten. Chen hurries to absorb her virus and realizes that the military will arrive soon. The guy thinks he urgently needs someone who knows the hospital and is trying to cure her. When the nurse rises in her normal state, Chen is even surprised that he succeeded. The girl gets up, thanks the guy, and says that she remembers everything, and this is exactly what Chen needs. The nurse agrees, but first wants to change clothes. Bai hurries the girl and demands that she take him to where all the viruses are stored. She takes Chen to the room where patient samples are kept. and he takes out several test tubes. The girl watches in panic as the guy pours liquid from all the test tubes into one flask. Bai absorbs all dangerous viruses from the mixture, adding points to his abilities. He looks at his glowing palms and plots to use this bonus to strengthen the zombie virus. The guy combines all the collected viruses and prepares to upgrade his powers. Finally, he combines all diseases into a virus of light and darkness, created to absorb and evolve. He is distracted by a girl who, in a panic, says that the zombie is already at the door. Bai asks her not to move and powerfully destroys the zombie under her uncomprehending gaze. At this time, Chen is glad that the zombie was fast, which will help test the acquired powers. The boy's arms turn into tentacles that wrap around the monster and suck the strength out of it. The tentacles engulf the zombie completely, sucking its entire essence into Bai. The girl is shocked and tries to understand what happened, but ends up offering her immunity in exchange for silence. Chen agrees and introduces himself to a girl named Su Xin. They hear loud noises, and Bai says that it is the military who have arrived to destroy all the zombies. The guy grabs Su by the hand and asks her to take him to the roof, from where they will escape. When the girl asks why he doesn't go out through the main exit, Bai replies on the run that he doesn't want to be captured. Suddenly, a giant monster jumps down from the ceiling and Chen tenses up. Bai's hand is bleeding, but he only thinks about what will happen if he absorbs a real mutant and rushes at him. The guy grabs all the zombies along the way, feeding on their strength, but realizes that he and the mutant are about equal. Gathering all his power, he releases his tentacles and flies straight at the monster. With great effort, he manages to knock the giant to the floor. Chen stops to heal, but at the same time he realizes that he will have to fight the mutant for a long time. Su Xin shakes off her daze and breaks the firebox to get the axe out. The girl calls out to Bai and throws him the weapon, while the mutant attacks his opponent again. Chen jumps back and catches the axe in midair, preparing to quickly end the fight. They fight furiously, flashing here and there, cutting each other with claws and an axe. Finally, Chen pins the monster to the ground with one last swing of his axe, and an advice to heal. But Bai rejoiced too soon, because the enraged mutant gets up and forcefully slams the guy into the wall. It looks like the monster has won. Chen is spurting blood and Su is screaming in fear. The mutant rips apart Bai's chest, but he is content to be on the brink of life. The guy looks at the monster with a grin, and to his surprise, releases dozens of tentacles from his chest in his direction. Tentacles envelop the vile body, penetrating into every crevice. Chen excitedly asks if he still hasn't realized that there is no turning back. Bai delightedly absorbs the mutant and receives new abilities from it in the form of claws. A squad of soldiers bursts into the building and asks the survivors to raise their hands. They tensely count to 3, and Bai picks up Su and says it's time for them to go. On the count of 3, the guy is already running away from the soldiers down the corridor, holding the girl in his arms while being shot in the back. Su points him towards the roof. She feels the bullets hitting the guy and tells him about it, but he only asks him not to move. Chen kicks down the door, runs out onto the roof with Su and asks where she lives. The girl dictates the address. The guy nods contentedly and runs with her in his arms straight from the roof. Soon, already in Su's apartment, the girl offers to treat the guy's wounds, but he says that everything healed right away. The girl insists on an examination, and Bai agrees. After examining the entire torso, she points to the mark left on his wrist. Su looks at his torso with confusion and notices that it too is not completely healed. Chen ironically states that if he eats it, he will be fully restored. To this, Su replies that if he wanted to, Bai would have eaten her long ago. The guy approaches and says that he was waiting for the right situation. He rips the girl's torn blouse off and says contentedly that he likes everything. Su fearfully suggests washing himself and then eating. Suddenly, Chen presses a hot kiss to the frightened nurse's lips. After some time, Chen walks through the city and reflects on what happened before the Great Awakening. He tells Su on the phone that he bought food for tomorrow, and she tells him that Song Ziken's men are looking for Bai. She assumes that it was a divorce, since Song is the queen of Jiangchen. Chen says it's not a bluff and asks them to wait outside. He scrolls through unread messages from Song Jae's mother, who is looking for him. Chen rushes to meet the woman, recalling how she succeeded in her legal and not-so-legal activities. At the site, Baya is met by the queen's assistant and asked to follow him. Chen continues to recall the path of Queen Song Ziqiang and how he could rely on her in his previous life. He believes that now is a different time, but if he can lure her to himself, he will do a lot before awakening. Meanwhile, the assistant brings Chen to the woman and tells her about his arrival. Sun regrets forcing Bai to come to her, but claims that there was no other choice. She seductively says that her daughter asked her to find Bai because he went missing in the hospital. She says pointedly that she called him to see what kind of guy had caught her daughter's attention. Chen coldly asks him to answer directly why he is here. The queen is quite pleased with Bai's stubbornness. She asks if he is willing to become her son-in-law if he loves Song Ge. Bai mutters that this is no reason to lure him over. Then Sun says that anyone would like to have his abilities. like the ones he showed in the hospital. The guy realizes that the woman somehow knows about everything that happened recently in the hospital. He nervously claims that he turned off all the electricity so she wouldn't find him. Sun explains that at a certain location, her people were able to observe him. She adds that she has her own people there too. She shows the conversation on her phone, which includes a video of Bai and Su running to the roof. Song says that after rescuing the survivors, she found a loved one in Sushin. Bai recalls asking Su about Liu Feng last night, who wanted to molest her and then pushed her to be eaten. The girl tells how he then jumped out of the window, and Bai thought he was dead. Su wearily says that it would be better if he were dead. Afterwards, she shyly suggests continuing the fun, even though her first time was loud. Even though Chen decides to postpone it until next time, the girl insists on pleasing her savior. At the Queen's base, Bai asks her where the isolated survivors are, but she refuses to answer. Chen says that if Song knew him, she wouldn't want to get him for herself. He also adds that he wants to get it himself, and shows the claws he acquired from the mutant. The Queen is frightened to realize that she is facing a mutation of the zombie virus, and her assistant immediately shields her with her body. But Chen denies it, adding that if she becomes his, he will show her everything. The Queen claims that claws are not enough to defeat her, and why does she need a MILF when he has a young nurse? Chen flatters her, adding that in the event of an apocalypse, only she can help him. When the Queen mocks him about a couple of zombies, he replies that the zombies were just a decoy. The woman assumes that the guy knows more than she thinks. In this case, the Queen offers Bayu to combine her resources and his knowledge. They make an agreement by shaking hands. Afterwards, she approaches and hints at a personal confrontation if he tries. Suddenly, they hear gunshots, which confuses everyone. The Queen tells how yesterday the commander arrived for negotiations to store live zombies in her warehouses. The shooting is coming from there, although there are only a couple dozen slow zombies and a company of guards there. Chen thinks that although zombies slow down in the cold, they often mutate in extreme conditions. He tries to calculate all the data and assumes that the area will be bombed now. Intrigued by his new mutation, he goes to check everything out. Right in front of them appears a huge mutant consisting of a bunch of zombies, at which grenades are thrown. This only angers the giant and he grabs the soldiers like cockroaches. Commander Zhao orders to split into groups to distract the monster and wait for reinforcements. The Queen appears behind him and orders him to cease fire and retreat. She explains that such tactics are needed to avoid losses, since the warriors will not be able to win. Song also orders all workers and survivors to be taken away, even though Zhao says it is impossible. As confirmation that the mutant is too fast, they see the shadow of a huge paw looming over the fleeing girl. However, the Queen still repeats to the commander that there is no need to be afraid of this monster. The next moment, Chen stops the mutant's hand, drawing the viral powers out of it. Bai chuckles at the fact that he is so big that he almost dislocated his arm. The guy then activates his claws and attacks the monster, cutting through it like butter. As a result of the fight, the giant still falls to the ground. Zhao asks in fear if she is raising this monster, to which the Queen replies that Bai is a human, and hers at that. The giant breaks down the wall and reaches for the raw meat, and Chen smirks and forbids him. He says it would be a waste of resources and eats the steaks himself. Raw beef allows the dark and light virus to mutate and increases strength and stamina. Bai laughs that the meat is so premium that it has increased his level. The monster is already exhausted and swarming around itself when Chen unleashes his claws and delivers a critical strike from the air. The guy digs his claws into all the monster's places while it is weakened. At the moment when the monster is trying with all its might to swat the guy from both sides, he readily digs into him with his tentacles. Captain Zhao is shocked and can't believe his eyes. At this time, Bai is busy absorbing the new mutant. The captain, watching from the side, does not believe that a person is capable of such a thing. After waiting for the right moment, Zhao notices that both are immobilized. Then he shouts into the radio that he demands bombing at the following coordinates. The Queen stops the captain, revealing that Bai is now saving them all. She urges not to do stupid things that could end badly for everyone. Chen starts receiving notification after notification about abilities being unlocked due to the new mutant. The guy realizes that this is all because the last monster was his biggest prey. He holds in his hand a cannonball that remains from what was once a mountain of meat. Bai sees a huge potential for abilities in the core, from gear to an endless wall of flesh. He even briefly considers feeding the core to all the people around him to test the wall, but the Queen shouts at him. Song introduces the guy to Lu Li. Chen recognizes her as the journalist who filmed him in the hospital. She confirms, and thanks him for saving her twice. Chen asks if she still has the recording of his fight with the mutant, then asks her to save it for something. Commander Huang demanded that Chen Bai come to him and tell him everything he knew about himself in the current situation. The name of this commander was impossible to forget, because after the tests, the weak awakened ones were placed in a cage and treated like unwanted dogs. At first he was drowning in his own justice, and then he simply began to mock people. Chenbai was one of them. He worked constantly and couldn't even eat properly. For attempts to escape, he classified them as traitors to the homeland and dealt with them mercilessly. Therefore, Chenbai had to leave this city, and when he followed this man, he didn't know what could happen, and the girl decided to figure it out herself. The man in military uniform shouted that he hoped they understood all the responsibility facing the citizens of the country of Lun. The girl answered him boldly and said that the commander himself came to her since he needed them so much. Suddenly, one of the soldiers ran by and shouted that a riot had occurred in the isolated zone, and he was waiting for an order on further actions. It turned out that among those isolated, Liu Fen was the most violent. Chenbai wanted to not meet the person. A surprised Liu Fen went out to the commander. He was sure that the commander had received a call from his father, Liu Huainong, the deputy head physician of the hospital. Chenbai placed his hand on his shoulder, infecting him with the zombie virus. The guy turned around in fear, and he told him that he was looking for him to discuss a few issues. Chenbai talked to Su Xin after he abandoned her and turned her into a zombie. Moving away from him, Chenbai shouted to always move away from the guy as he was about to turn into a zombie. The guy wanted to run up to Chenbai, but the process in his body had already begun. And in a couple of moments he became a zombie. Chenbai released his mutated fist towards him, and destroyed it with one blow. Turning to Mrs. Song, he asked her to leave, reassuring her that he would report everything when he was finished here. She asked to be called Zikyong, although Song was also acceptable. She considered their partnership unprofitable, and asked if it was too late to change everything. But in the guy's opinion, everything depended only on her. Sitting in the car, she reflected that it was just the right time to invite him to lunch, but Chenbai asked not to touch him until they arrived at her house. He was now interested in whether he had received anything worthwhile for this victory over the meat mutant. He was lucky and 2 whole skill books were added to his collection, bloodthirstiness and bone growth. Although these skills were useless to him, at this stage they were bound to come in handy sooner or later. He needed to gather his strength now, and several gold coins fell from the mutant. It was even possible to invite people there so that they could have time to prepare before awakening. He got up chatting with the thought of how he would build his white palace and make Eros his slave. In the Song family residence, Chenbai was discussing with his acquaintance that soon 90% of people would become monsters. He knew that at that moment there would be failures in electrical equipment and weapons. The girl began to understand that she was doing everything so that she would work for him. But he did it for the sake of strength and opportunity, and most importantly, for the sake of justice. But she agreed only with fidelity. And everything that concerned power, she was ideally suited, because among the powers of wealth and status, she had no equal. But Chenbai knew that after awakening, the values and attitudes would be different, and everything you had would be destroyed. And they will make a slave out of her and betray her in the city square. She didn't understand what the difference was between dogs and people who became toys. Chenbai explained that the dog was ordered to do everything to realize his potential without the direct intervention of his master, so he would remain stronger than her. It turned out that if she doubted him, she would lose such a wonderful opportunity, and she knelt down and swore eternal fidelity to him. Chenbai appreciated that her status capabilities had suddenly become more useful. He asked her to give him the opportunity to behold her beauty. A message came into the chat asking to forward a video of Chenbai and send Lu Li home. She asked Lu Li to send her the video and go home under the pretext of recuperating after a hard day. Lu Li was happy because she was almost bitten today. But today she was not as tense as when she first met the zombies. Perhaps because on a subconscious level, she had already come to terms with the possibility of death at the hands of zombies. Songge called her mother's phone, but Chenbai answered. The girl asked what happened and why she needed to go home. But hearing the guy's voice, she asked why he answered and what he did with her mother. He replied that she was very busy now and could not answer her so that the girl could return home because she had important business. She agreed. She said that he would answer for all the messages sent to him. He hung up and she, angry, decided that sooner or later she would have to answer for everything and bow down before her. The mother asked Chenbai to protect her daughter too, but he refused, saying that she was too weakly spoiled. But if she tries after waking up, he will not let her turn into a monster. She thanked her master. The daughter tried to reason with her mother not to let Chenbai deceive her, and especially not to do such indecent things to her. But that was precisely why her mother forbade her to look for Chenbai. And when they got out of the car, she asked her to remain silent and watch him. After going around all the places where zombies were mentioned, they found an abandoned warehouse building. It used to be an underground casino until its owners and players turned into monsters, about 160 people in total. Chenbai thought it would be a bit difficult and tried to remember what happened in the middle of this wilderness. He asked how exactly you, the girl, came to this place. Looks like someone was collecting them on this zombie farm. Perhaps it was some daredevil or pioneer. They opened the warehouse door and a crowd of angry monsters poured out. Chenbai began to destroy them. In the end, he destroyed more than 300 zombies and received a new rank. Now he's an E-class zombie killer and has the genome formula. I discovered the zombie blood serum. He asked if she remembered what he told her before leaving. The main thing is to kill them with your own hands, avoiding bites. And he began to take out the zombies one by one. The first girl rushed to kill. She threw the zombie over herself, breaking all of his vertebrae. She was fast and cruel. The second one began to smash them with a bat. I couldn't kill him in one hit, but I managed to do it in a few. But the zombies continued to make sounds. It turns out that she was too weak to fight off the zombies. But knowing how a person works inside, she was somehow able to kill them. Now it was Songgae's turn. But she couldn't control herself because of fear. Chenbai told her mother to leave. Leng Shuang went around all the places where zombies were rumored to be, but all was in vain, and he told her to go and check everything herself. He had neither the time nor the desire to drag weaklings along with him, so training was now done on her. But she didn't have the strength to cleanse the virus, and Chen Bai handed her a piece of paper. It was a genome formula, and it had a very complex structure. He tasked her with creating her own by replacing the elements. She thanked him for his generosity. It was time for her to start carrying out the task and then send someone to him. After checking the forum, he saw that his message had already been read by a lot of people, and he didn't even expect that so many pioneers would contact him. He reread all these shameful messages, and suddenly he saw a personal message from a certain pioneer, and Chen Bai invited him to join the general chat. Chen Bai remembered who Mujikawa was. It was said that he received the title of the strongest lord of water. He even laughed. A real pioneer had joined his team. Lu Li assured Song Ziqiang that it was all because of the government. The zombies were being collected and hidden in a warehouse. She said that she sent her people there, but they disappeared somewhere. Suddenly, people fell from the sky and Lu Li shuddered. Xing Meng climbed out of the window and greeted Lu Li with a nasty smile. She trembled, not understanding how she had been found. At that time, Chen Bai was chatting on the phone, discussing talents. Song Ziqiang approached him, and he lazily asked what had happened again. She reported that they were being called to negotiate because Lu Li had been kidnapped, and she had learned too much. He stood up and mockingly asked if they had contacted her yet. Chen Bai's repeated questions sounded so frightening that she turned pale. He asked why they didn't contact the main one. She bowed before him, begging him to believe that it was her fault, not Lu Li's. He looked at her and promised that he would save her. Xing Meng meanwhile sipped his wine and said that Lu Li might as well give up, otherwise he would become a plaything. Lu Li was tied up and looked defenseless. He offered her a drink with a grin. She was trembling, but he still insisted. And suddenly, at one point, Chen Bai was already there, chewing on a steak and sarcastically saying that Lu Li couldn't stand wine. He stood up and offered her a piece. She tried, and he promised to bring her home. Xing Meng didn't understand how he had come up and asked if he was a pioneer. Chen Bai had already released Lu Li and said that a car was waiting for them. Xing Meng realized that Ziqiang was on his side. He was shocked that she gave in so quickly. After pouring some wine, Xing Meng proposed to team up. He promised him everything if Chen Bai helped him become the king of the city. He refused without even blinking. Xing Meng was so shocked that he dropped his glasses. He flashed his eyes and said that he was S-rank. Chen Bai noticed with disgust that he was collecting zombies and wasting his gift, and he added that he would not help someone who was unworthy. Since he had an SSS rank, Xing Meng pulled out his claws and boasted that he was absorbing the powers of his victims. He said that there was no one stronger than him. Chen Bai realized that he was not just copying, but also enhancing. Xing Meng charged forward, shouting that he would take away his strength. But Chen Bai took out his claws and parried. Xing Meng strengthened himself and said that he could improve his attributes. Chen Bai wondered why he said this. He pounced on him again, and Chen Bai thought that he had to be careful with him. Chen Bai made his hand huge and strong and rushed to attack. Their blows collided, and from their force, everything around began to collapse. Xing Meng flew away, and Chen Bai walked on. He yelled that Chen Bai was at his limit. In the heat of battle, Xing Meng wondered why he didn't use the SSS talent. Chen Bai just smiled and said that he had already used it, but he just didn't notice. Xing Meng angrily threw him away and called him stubborn. He hit Chen Bai so hard that he was sent flying into the container. Xing Meng bared his teeth. He was sure that he was weaker. He was just hiding it. Xing Meng suddenly winced in pain, and blood began to flow from his mouth. He couldn't believe his eyes when the debuffs popped up. Chen Bai chuckled and said that he had done well before being infected. In response, Xing Meng exploded with force and yelled that he was a scoundrel. In 1 second, Chen Bai was there and pierced him through. He looked at him and said that they were on different levels, but he didn't believe it. Then he calmly absorbed it in the hope of extracting at least some benefit. He looked at his skills and saw a jump. All the characteristics increased by 20, and he went to base. He reached for his claws and added that a person with a stat below 5 was as weak as a feather to him. He admitted that Xing Meng was no slouch, but even if he killed mountains of zombies, he wouldn't reach his level. A C-rank blueprint flashed in his inventory, and he added that luck was on his side. In his mind, he recalled the path from E rank to SSS. Lu Li and Jiang Cheng were already waiting for him near the car. He decided that in today's world there was no point in fighting monsters, and he added that in the last days it is worth preparing for a new world. Jiang Cheng, Lu Li, and Su Xin entered the manor and everything was ready. Lu Li spoke happily about the control in the center after waking up. Su Xin quietly asked to double-check the data. Jiang Cheng asked if there was anything else needed. He said that nothing was needed and asked to leave everything on the table while he buried his face in his phone. He wrote in the chat that no one should get into the fire from the very beginning, otherwise they will be deleted immediately. Then he turned to Jiang Cheng and said that it was time to put things aside. They looked at the city, counting the seconds. In another room stood two girls, one of whom was trembling with fear. Time is up. The city is painted scarlet. Awakening has begun. The earth was plunged into chaos. Monsters and zombies began to massacre. The survivors awakened and received their first talents. The fight for survival has begun. The world became cracked and mysterious zones became accessible. Chen Bai looked and thought that now he only had to move forward. Suddenly a notification appeared about the launch of the hourglass. He immediately realized that this could not be shown and ordered everyone to run. But people froze, as if time had stood still. Even the falling plane froze in the sky. The watch began to emit powerful energy. The system confirmed that the watch was tied, and he guessed that returning to the past allowed him to be reborn. His new talent for preservation delighted him. When time started up again, Jiang Cheng asked if he had called them. He ordered to check the security of the mansion before it got dark. They nodded and went on their rounds. On the second day, the destruction became more intense. Jiang Cheng attacked the monsters using a C-rank skill. Her skill scanned enemies and strengthened her. One zombie was caught, and the system gave out all of its characteristics. Ali with the A-rank skill became fast and almost invisible. One of the fighters brought in another survivor. Su Xin, with a B-rank healing skill, said to inject the survivor with serum. Chen Bai came to Lu Li and said that everything was surprisingly calm. She replied that it was all thanks to him. He looked at the sky and said that he was counting on them, while he himself would take care of important matters. After waking up, transport and communication stopped functioning. Although with his speed, Chen Bai seemed to be able to keep up. Even before his rebirth as a university, a red mark hung over him, and he was able to understand its purpose only after some time. It was already too late. Now he has decided not to miss this chance. Looking at the sky, he collected viruses, and he did not take his eyes off the mark that all the awakened ones would like to see, because it indicated the place of the deity's descent. This time he came just in time, but suddenly the creator appeared on his way. He was glad to meet such a strong guy, and he had an offer that he couldn't refuse. He really interested Chen Bai. After all, he looked at this mark day and night, anticipating a meeting with it. Here at last their acquaintance took place. This was the majority of Lei Dou's trade, and he handed him a green plastic card as a gift. It was a gold card from the Goblin Market. It gave a 12% discount. Chen Bai remembered that in his past life, it was impossible to appease the merchant with compliments. But now, everything was the opposite. Now he was ready to bargain and began to present his goods to the guy. Chen Bai was taken aback when he saw the legendary profession change scroll, and there were also a huge number of rare items in stock. He thanked her for such a generous offer, but it was all beyond his means. The merchant knew that after waking up almost everyone would be penniless. But all his goods were of the highest quality, so the high price was fully justified. But Chen Bai couldn't afford these goods. But he heard that the gods couldn't directly influence the progress of the tests during awakening, so he sponsored the pioneers so that they could bring them profit in the future. After all, Lei Dou came here precisely for this reason. The shopping center noted that the guy was well informed and, smiling, asked if he wanted his money. Chen Bai heard that he had countless treasures that no one in their right mind would refuse, and offered to invest with him. Lei Dou reasoned that the money invested in awakening was already a surplus, and asked why on earth the guy decided that he could bring in more than what the gods had planned. After all, even the most stupid person will have questions about the effectiveness of such spontaneous investments. The guy demonstrated his abilities as collateral. Lei Dou applauded him, having never seen such talent before. There were so many interesting things on this planet, but he didn't expect that anything on this planet would bring him income. And he decided to give Chen Bai one chance, because if he didn't have such talent, he would never have agreed to this deal. The guy asked when he could get the scroll. First, he needed to prove his talent in action, and he offered Chen Bai a task, which he agreed to. He handed him a coin tossed which he could call the merchant. Taking the coin in his hands, Chen Bai asked the merchant to show what other treasures the other gods had, and he agreed, taking out a golden scroll. On this they agreed. The merchant didn't even think that the day would be special and hoped that everything would go well. Now the conditions of the task were available to him. He needed to get the maximum investment from the goblins, but the reward was determined by Lei Dou himself. In a past life, Everyone knew about it. If you do everything perfectly, the reward will be better. Chen Bai couldn't understand whether a copy of the university had appeared since the beginning of the apocalypse. Apparently they had hidden it well before, and he began searching. At this time, someone was beating up students in the gym. The bully ordered them to undress and begged to become his slaves. Otherwise, he promised to kill them. But they did not give up. The brute's eyes flashed, considering that they had chosen death. The girl next to him tried to stop him, but she received a powerful blow to the face. Suddenly, Chen Bai appeared. The thug decided to give him a beating too, but Chen Bai preferred to kill such people. One of his buddies wanted to pounce on the guy from behind, but unexpectedly I met his huge fist. Chen Bai looked for students from the medical faculty, but all of those present had other majors. Suddenly they pointed to one of the girls lying on the floor. She begged her not to kill her. A friend stood up for her, saying that she didn't hit anyone but simply decided to argue with those guys. Chen Bai already knew this. He told the girl to stay and ordered the others to disperse. He told them to go to Dongshan and tell them that he was from them so that they would let them in, but on the way to avoid the corpses of zombies. The students were afraid to go so far because there were zombies all around. But Chen Bai reassured them by saying that he had killed almost all the zombies in the area, so they were almost safe. He said not to waste time because now monsters have begun to develop at a high speed. I didn't agree. They probably didn't have a second chance. The girl he left with him was very scared. The guys from the university were crazy about foreign students, and she decided that Chen Bai was one of them. But he only needed to be shown the way to the medical faculty, and she was so scared that she had missed all his words before. She tried to justify herself to him that she was not a slut. She had never had a boyfriend before, and she was ready to prove it. On the way, she said that she was very tired and would like to rest a little. But Chen Bai grabbed her by the waist and they flew at breakneck speed. The girl almost lost all her clothes on the way. They got to the medical faculty. The girl told them on which floors there were laboratories where there were samples of different viruses and bacteria. On the lower floors underground there was a large waste incineration plant. And that was not all that was hidden by the walls of this faculty. Chen Bai never thought that she could be so useful in the medical faculty. There were mainly flu viruses here, but he decided to use even them, setting himself a bunch of reminders. Using it, he got a new skill flu. He was extremely pleased with the abilities he had acquired. When he looked through the tree of diseases, who did not pay special attention to the viruses that exist in reality. It seems like it took more time to upgrade these viruses. How much could he do with his talent? He still had a few upgrade points left, and the best solution would be to invest in strength, because apparently he would still have to tinker with the god of trade. Now he has received new skills, flying over walls and combat concentration. I couldn't even think that it was all his muscles. After all, he could destroy walls with one blow of his fist. The girl was already mentally imagining what such strong hands could do to her. Now he can control all the muscles of the body, both together and separately. And now, even if he has no strength left, he can still deliver a fatal blow. Looking at the girl, he asked why she was standing there all red as a tomato. There was no light in the basement. She was very scared, and Chen Bai ordered her to stand still until he checked everything. They finally got to the place he needed, and he asked her to wait outside. This place was the university crematorium. It was very surprising that they didn't meet anyone on the way here, and he prepared for battle. Terrible monsters flew at him from the ceiling, but he easily completed the tasks of this quest and earned points. Another monster was looking at him from the ceiling. They did not attack all at once, but used their force one by one. But they were still easy to predict, and Chen Bai put his talent to use. Huge hands pinned the monster to the ceiling. For killing a rare resurrected spider, he received a worthy reward, and he easily crushed more and more monsters that approached him. The system notifies Bei about a new level and 2 free attribute points. He walks carefully down the corridor, claws outstretched, luring the monster. Finally, a piece of flesh appears and looks ridiculous. Chen senses danger from the mutant. Still small, he crawls out of hiding, and Baiyu needs to catch up before he transforms. The monster turns out to be stronger. It grows larger and attacks powerfully. This only makes Chen more excited. He sees that this biochemical monster has a high regeneration rate. They fight with all their might. During a moment of respite, Bai thinks that he used to use less than a third of his strength, and now his muscles are starting to stiffen. So you need to use the enemy's forces to restore your own. An hour later, they are still fighting, and Chen is waiting for the mutant's regeneration to fail. Bai's status is updated, and he rushes forward again, wanting to test the enemy's immortality. An hour later, the mutant is clearly starting to give in, although he can still stand on his feet. Another hour passes, and the mutant is already lying on the ground under the guy's disappointed barbs. Chen looks closely, and it seems to him that the withered stump is trying to recover. Then he decides to end the fight. After Bai stomps on a slug, he immediately gains a level boost for killing the level 8 boss. Later, at the Song family's villa, the queen watches the news and comes across a familiar name. A video of the battle with the mutant has been released, but the identity of the evolutionist is hidden. They recognize him but decide to watch. This video is being watched by a lot of people in different places at the same time. Some people have to slow down the video to see the details because the hero is too fast. Others cheer with admiration for the monster slayer. Some people are debating whether Bai's style is suitable and how much stronger the monsters are. However, everyone notices that Bai regenerates in battle much faster than his colleagues. Chen is in the dungeon trying to summon the black light virus. He sees that this virus can be used to gain a new ability to regenerate cells. He then decides to observe the boss monsters to find out all the weak points. He looks at the A-level demon scroll and reads that the new ability requires level 10. He opens a vial of the black light virus, knowing that by consuming it, his form will improve. Bai drinks and immediately his strength, body, and agility points increase. Then he takes out a crumpled thing, which turns out to be magical leather with its own enhancements. Chen reads the description of the skin and does not understand what specific effect it can give. He opens his luggage and sees forgotten loot, picked up from the dead. He sorts through the leather equipment, which can only be useful under clothing. The ability book turns out to be useless to Chen, and he decides to exchange it for something useful. He is about to leave, as the mission is completed. Bai laughs at those who didn't believe Chung would pass through so quickly. The guy is about to leave the location when he begins to think that something is wrong with the goblin Lei Do. He begins to discuss with himself the options why Lei Do is interested in him and the location. Chen walks through the room and senses something interesting. He notices an old garbage chute and approaches it. The next moment he is already opening a secret door, which apparently leads to the inner part of the plant. He crawls over the iron cremation trays but doesn't see anything suspicious yet. Then he sees a large pipe and decides that there might be something interesting in it. The boy jumps up and runs up the pipe, noting that it is very long. He is very surprised when he comes across a dead end at the end. Bai doesn't believe that there is nothing here. At that moment, a face appears from the wall and starts screaming. Taken by surprise, Chen punches the face and gains some information about the mysterious masks of the factory. Bai is surprised that the system didn't warn him earlier, which means that this is a rare and unknown attribute. He grabs the mask and assumes that this is what Lei Do is looking for. This would mean that it could be exchanged or sold. When Chen crawls out of the garbage chute, a girl is already meeting him in the university corridor. She rushes to comment on his progress with delight. Chen interrupts her by asking if she has a few copper coins. He thinks that he doesn't even know how many coins he has, because he just posted the video. He checks the system and sees that he doesn't have enough gold coins from views to access his own warehouse. He will have to wait for the completion, since he can only reliably hide the item in a warehouse. He and the girl leave the building, and in response to her question, he answers that they now need to find a place to stay for the night. Tu mentions that there are a couple of good hotels near the university, not crowded with people and with high floors. Bai agrees and asks to be taken there. Later at the hotel, Bai bumps into her friend dressed for role-playing, which she explains as a new level of relationship. He mockingly says that this image does not suit her. The embarrassed girl goes to change. When you come back in your police uniform, Chen says you're too cute to be an evil cop and sends you to change. He also rejects the teacher-student images. Just when the guy was almost disappointed, his girlfriend appears in a fox costume. Bai looks at the image with a predatory expression and is pleased that today he will have a small animal. Sometime later, after a stormy night, when the girl is asleep, Bai again tries to gain access to the warehouse. The system opens access by adding even more new functions. Chen throws in a copper coin and opens it, summoning a goblin merchant. Bai recalls rumors that the goblin's best commodity is the client's emotions, for which he can even change the rules. The goblin is glad that Bai decided to report to him so quickly about the completed task. Chen throws something at the merchant's feet and reminds him that the requirements are to hand over an organ from the monster he killed. The piece of meat is dry and rotten. The goblin notices this. The merchant asks with displeasure why Bai didn't call him yesterday when he completed the task. He doubts that Chen really wants that scroll. Bai becomes gloomy and asks, why did such a respected merchant hide the true value of the dungeon from him? The guy explains that he immediately understood the high level as soon as he entered it. The goblin hesitated and muttered that he wanted to warn, but couldn't. He says he wanted Bai to get this valuable body part, not someone else. Chen nods and asks what he will get for this and the following missions. First, the goblin apologizes. Then he is convinced of Bai's strength. He offers the guy to choose his own reward, and mentions that the next mission will be here again. Chen thanks the goblin for his understanding. The creature offers to choose any attribute of its level, and calls up images of cards. Bai chooses the drawing of the sacred scroll. The goblin clearly didn't expect the boy to choose the ancient city search scroll. He notices that Chen is indeed very smart, and that the final stage lies ahead. The notification screen shows that the scroll and difficulty level are too high for Bai. Chen nervously says that even gods are not born with power of this level. The goblin explains with a grin that his first mission was indeed A level. But he adds that this is his best product, so he cannot take such risks. Bai agrees and accepts the attribute. In the Dongshan area, a giant mutant rat of the 5th level is killing people. The queen and her assistant find themselves trapped and discuss the powerful attributes of this monster. The queen's men, maimed during the fight, also hide with her. Then the rat breaks through their shelter and covers them with stones. The assistant tries to convince the queen to leave here, but she says it is too late. A huge mutant lunges at the women from above. Bai appears from somewhere in the sky in an energy ball and attacks the rat. The queen is happy to see him, and the guy calmly says that he arrived on time. He calls on people to leave the battlefield and promises compensation to those killed. Later, they sit in the office and discuss where the mutants came from and how many victims there are. Chen promises to finish off the remaining rats and asks to find out where they are coming from. The queen suggests that they all relax together and wants to introduce the guy to someone. The woman calls into the room the rescued Qinling Yu, who is both a lawyer and not against intimacy. A pleased Chen asks the guest to stay and the others to leave. The girl offers to fulfill any request. Bai wants to see if lawyers' tongues are really that sharp. Later, Chen praises Lin's skills while leaning back on the sofa. A guy calls a girl to talk about upcoming work, but the girl suddenly takes a position for intimacy instead of talking. She explains that because of her ability, she cannot see or hear anything except the target. Bai nods and shows her all 3 districts of Dongshan from the window. There are luxury homes and cheap slums. The guy asks her to set his general requirements for all areas. Lin agrees, and Chen wants to know more about her ability. He suggests the girl to concentrate on her feelings. Bai wants to test how much she can increase her sensitivity sensor. She concentrates for the experiment. The next day, Chen shows people the entrance to the sewers, pointing out that there might be a rat den there. He asks all the men to come inside with him so that they can protect the others if Baya is gone. He emphasizes that only the strongest will be able to protect the people of their area. Chen warns that it will be difficult there, and asks that from now on he can be called Bai Di. Bai descends into the water and breaks the sewer grate, calling for action. At this point, almost everyone gets a message about the special mission Sewer Master. The requirements include killing the rats, the mutant king, and finding the source of the mutation. The drain turns out to be surprisingly clean, and the darkness is broken by the light of torches. Chen stops the others with a gesture, hearing something approaching. A horde of rats rushes across the water towards the guests. Bai happily materializes claws and an axe, preparing for battle. The guy scatters all the rodents, not forgetting to give instructions to his people. The still-moving rats are finished off right in the water. After a while, the queen counts how many paths they have already cleared, and how close they are to the end. The man shouts that there is a rat behind her and the queen thinks she can handle it alone. Chen advises her to use her reconnaissance skill in advance. She obeys and sees the 7th level boss approaching. The queen reads his characteristics and does not understand how he can be defeated. Without listening to the end, Bai releases his claws and rushes forward. She watches in amazement as Chen rips open the mutant's belly. After defeating the boss, the guy gets a new card with the Plague Boots attribute. He uses them despite their low level. After defeating the Rat King, it remains to find out the source of the mutation. People are starting to worry that there aren't any more rats. Chen understands that the viruses he has absorbed are dangerous even for mutants. This means that the source of the mutation is very close. Then Chen Bai decided to go alone, asking Michelle to take command of the squad and leave there immediately. With every step he took, the points for absorbing the virus only increased. Having discovered the source, he realized that this was paradise for him. Ahead of him, he saw the source of the plague virus. Apparently, it all started with this virus. All the information was in the scroll that was in the corpse's hand. Well, when he unfolded it, there was no instruction manual inside. If Chen Bai swallowed all of these viruses, his strength would increase several times at once. But suddenly his hand dropped the scroll. New powers enveloped him entirely, and on his palm appeared the seal of the plague as an identification mark of a member of the plague cult. And Chen Bai received a new quest with a difficulty level of SSS. If he becomes the plague god, who will be able to fight the plague carrier face to face. A more difficult level, the hellish dungeon, was revealed to him. Almost a month was given to complete it, since the level of this dungeon was very high. At this time, the other team members opened the medium difficulty Dongshan dungeon, and levels 1 through 10 could motivate many to complete it. Michelle was glad that Chen Bai returned and told him. Chen Bai himself explained to everyone the rules for passing the new dungeon. He also suggested that the girls join groups. They had to form a team themselves and then join his group. Michelle was surprised when she saw that Chen Bai was the #1 commander. He explained that the number is just the order in which players become commanders. Michelle's daughter asked why she didn't receive an invitation to his group, but only dedicated and capable people could join his team. That's why he didn't invite the little girl who was deathly afraid of zombies. She accused him of arrogance because she had already made her choice. Chenbai suggested that she choose equipment and enter the dungeon so that he could personally see her skills. The girls entered the sewer dungeon, and the commander reminded them that no help would come from him. After all, he hadn't yet seen the abilities of some of them. One could then create phantoms from her imagination. But in battle, her ability was practically useless due to her slowness. The other one had a talent called Sea-Level Genius, and it increased her level and skill by 50%. But in Chenbai's opinion, phantoms were more useful than this skill, although she was able to kill all the rats single-handedly. As an exception, he decided to take her into the team, but she pretended that she didn't really need it, to which the commander said that he respected her choice and would send her an invitation. Offended, she said that he was losing not only a beautiful girl but also a good fighter. Her mother stood up for her and asked her to be taken into the team, and for the sake of her mother, Chenbai sent out an invitation. Xiaoge was very happy and accepted it. Chenbai noted that although she was still very young, she was very quick-witted. Flirting with him, Michelle promised to convince her daughter to call him daddy. Xiaoge was very similar to her mother and would be forced to acknowledge him. It's only worth giving her a lesson. Comfort during the end of the world could only be due to their leader. Suddenly the girl saw a notice about clearing the dungeon, and I decided to watch the video despite the high cost. She became interested in who these girls were next to the commander. This video was also viewed by other people from the chat. The audience watches Bai's attack on the dungeon and discusses the high level of the monsters. A boss appears on the screen, whom the viewer imagined to be weaker. Many people are watching the broadcast at the same time. One of them, Tom with a high C rank, says that Bai is definitely stronger than him, since he killed the boss in a few seconds. The audience also discusses the girls, Bai's students, who also fight well. One girl envies Bai's students because they can see him every day. Bai instructs the girl to engage in the sale and purchase of various attributes obtained in battle. He also gives 3 important items to her personally. She looks with admiration at the indicators of the wall of flesh, which even monsters cannot pass through. The girl realizes that with the help of the wall and the scroll of return, they can become the rulers of Jiangcheng. She takes the body-improving skin with interest, for any shape. Chen notices that she likes this item the most. However, in response, he hears that he is the master of everything, and that everyone else likes what he likes. Bai asks if the girl will be able to surprise him, but she replies that it will not be her. She offers to change Xiaoge's clothes for an official meeting with him and asks him to wait. After a while, Chen carries the girl with animal paws and tail into the bedroom of Michelle's mansion. He carefully places her on the bed, where several other half-naked girls are already sleeping. He then leaves, equipping the plague set and buffing his attributes as he goes. He looks through his storage and figures he can assemble the kit in 3 days. A private invitation arrives from Meng, asking for the leader's help and advice. Chen asks her to tell him everything about her abilities, or at least list her attributes so that he can help. She agrees, and Bai thinks that he doesn't remember her from her past life. Suddenly, he remembers her fighting image and that she has 31 points. This is the level of the SSS and the endless growth of abilities, especially since she is not being reborn for the first time. Mengman talks about how he can penetrate the world of dreams, the dreams of other people, and take objects out of there. Also, that in dreams you can change something, and a shared dream allows you to invite others to you. Chen understands that she is almost invincible, and to protect herself, she just needs to guard her body. Meng suggests meeting in a shared dream. Bai refuses due to fears for his life, but she promises to sign a contract. The guy clarifies that she is talking about the Evolver's security contract, which costs 10 coins. Meng shows what rare and useful attributes she has. The girl worries that without improving her abilities, she will soon die. Chen agrees, given the difference between body and ability. He agrees to the Evolver contract, and thinks that he needs to keep such an ability close to him. Soon, Chen accepts the contract and lies down to relax and drift into a dream world. The guy thinks that if he improves her ability, she will become invincible. Soon, Bai finds himself in an unfamiliar place, where he is met by a girl who introduces herself as Meng. Chen introduces herself in response and adds that her dream does not look like a place to train. The girl sits down and says that they will not study here. Meng points to the portal that has appeared and says that they will go to the gym nearby. The guy looks out of it and looks around. Chen is amazed at how big the world is on the other side, and the girl explains that the dream world reflects the real world. Bai nods and suggests hurrying up with the training. They pass through the portal. Baya is amused by the way the girl behaves. She explains that she was a writer until the end of the world. The guy offers a sparring match without abilities to assess her fighting skills. The girl says that in her dreams her powers are equal to level 48, and that he should be more careful. The guy asks her to attack with full force. She rushes forward with a battle cry, but the next second she misses Bayu, who had assessed her instability. Then she rushes forward, waving her fists. But again, Bei misses and makes a mockery of the 5-year-old's boxing. He scolds her center of gravity and weak attack. Afterwards, he advises not to hit, but to aim at the enemy's unprotected areas. He also tells her to watch her opponent and not just attack. At this point, the guy stops the girl and asks her to first learn these 3 important rules. Bai is reproached by her reaction, and the girl asks for an apology. Basically, Chen tells her to try hard and Meng promises. Later, in the office, the assistant reports to Bai about the publication of the Dongshan laws. Chen approves and announces that he will leave tomorrow morning, leaving the leadership in her hands. The woman is surprised that he is leaving so quickly, because there is one more thing missing from the plague kit. The guy replies that he has been chasing him for too long, and there are more valuable things besides him. The woman hugs Chen and asks him to come back quickly. Finally, Bai asks to call all the girls to have some fun. They relaxed wildly all night long. The next morning, the guy comes out of the bedroom and bumps into the employee who was looking for him. She talks about the unrest in the settlement at the foot of the mountain, and Bai says that he has nothing to do with it. He reminds her of the published rules and says that she knows what they do to rioters. She apologizes and clarifies that many of them call themselves Bai's classmates. Then the guy goes to look with interest, and when he is seen from afar, people start shouting his name. The assistant explains that these people do not want to pay taxes, but want to have security. One of the people shouts his name, and Bai says he remembers someone like that. Chen asks him why he is creating trouble when it is quite easy to earn coins. The resident replies that it is not about money, but that despite the abundant resources, Bai does not want to help others and share. He is supported by others who agree that the abolition of the tax will lead to a better life. Chen says with irritation that he is not in the mood to argue. He also announces that there are rules here, and anyone who doesn't like them can leave. He calmly comes down and says that anyone who doesn't leave here in 3 minutes will be killed. Then he asks his assistant, Leng Xuan, to start the countdown. However, the student council president has no plans to leave and is convinced that everyone will support him. The guard shouts that he will not protect those who are stingy with a single coin for taxes. He mocks the villagers, offering to become their dog for 2 coins, since they can't kill 1 zombie a day. The offended elder nevertheless leaves, threatening Baiyu that he will regret it. Chen stops him, and he asks contentedly if Bai has regretted it yet. Chen summons his claws and strikes the elder with all his might, causing the villagers to retreat in fear. Bai calmly replies that he would regret it if one particular scumbag escaped now. Len reminds them that there is still 1 minute left, and no one has left yet. The guy starts begging for another chance and promises to follow the rules. Chen retreats and demands 5 coins, and in a month he will be able to live as he wants. The others also ask for a chance. Bai turns to leave, giving orders to Lan to proceed further herself. The guy receives a message from Meng. In the correspondence she asks where he is, then says that he is nearby. Bai offers to take her if she is willing to follow him, then remembers Wucheng as a city from a past life. High-quality materials can be obtained in this city. After some thought, he decides to go to Wucheng first. At the hotel, the brothers discuss how much food they have left to live on. Zhang Luoping shouts that it's all because of a special zombie with sharp instincts. He notices people as soon as they descend below the 10th floor. 2 girls come up to them and point at something. Everyone turns to the window and sees a blurry silhouette quickly jumping between the rooftops and thinks it's a zombie. Lopin fears that someone who can fly and walk on walls is dangerous, but his friend thinks that it is a person. The guys start arguing about it. Wei Shuwei reminds him of his ability and insists that he is a human. Zhuang Yixiu sees the silhouette approaching, and the huge zombie notices it too. Bai stops when he sees Despot ahead, glad that he has the blueprint for Despot's bone weapon. He is thinking about what weapon to attack him with. In the end, he decides to decapitate, releases his claws, and jumps down. The boys watch from behind the curtain. Yixue asks them not to look, as it is dangerous. Wei comments on the fight and the appearance of claws, which makes the guys doubt that Bai is still human. The girl, surprised, tells the others that he killed the monster and is absorbing it. The next moment, she sees Chen's face. Absorbing Despot grants Bai new skills and powers in the form of muscles and a shield. He reasons that the muscles may be uncomfortable, but the shield is more powerful than his current defense. Wei recognizes the man and happily calls out to Bai from the window. The guy is surprised and cannot understand who it is. Lopin drags Wei away from the window and hisses that it might not be that Bai but a monster since he killed that zombie so easily. A silhouette appears in the window behind the curtains, and then a voice says that it is Chen, and someone has called him here. The girl breaks free and runs to the window, screaming who she is. Seeing Wei Bai, he recognizes her as Miss Song's friend. Wei asks if Songge is okay. Later, in the room, Bai tells the guys about the settlement and that Songge is helping him. Wei happily asks if this is true. The others immediately begin to discuss how many people there are in his settlement and whether the queen herself is really helping him. Chen confirms and says that they will see for themselves if they come. The door opens and a guy enters the room. He calls Bai by name, and he also recognizes Lin Qizheng. Along with him were Zhao Mu and Li Feng, who heard someone calling Bai. When asked where they came from, Lin said that many students went to help Miss Wei that day. He even wanted to call him too, but Li Feng convinced him that Bai was definitely busy. Chen asks how many of them are here and suggests going to his settlement. The guy immediately warns that in his settlement, the rule is to hand over 1 coin per day. The comrade agrees and asks if Bai can lead them along the dangerous road to Dongshan. Chen says he still has things to do, but he didn't see anyone on the road except Despot, so the coast is clear. The guy opens the cards and leaves spare equipment for Qizhen, Mu, and Wei. Chen sends them to his settlement and is about to leave on his own business. The guys give their friend some good advice as they see him off. Bai jumps on the rooftops, receives a message from Meng that the group has complaints from the king of Hanshao. The guys who remained at the hotel discuss the advantages of being sent to the settlement. Lapin says that we need to prepare for a dangerous journey. The second one is about to say something, but Wei notices that Bai has returned. She asks what happened, and Chen says he needs a temporary team for the case. The guys happily offer themselves as candidates. Wei remembers something and asks Bai to wait. She catches up with the guy already in the corridor and asks for Songye's phone number. The guys immediately ask for Bai's number to add it, and he dictates to them 001. The guys don't understand at first, but then they start laughing at the joke. One tells the other to add in order to understand. The system confirms that this is Bai's number, and Chen urges the guys to move on. Later, the guys sit in a room and discuss how Bai became the first evolver since their numbers match the order of formation. Mu recalls Chen writing in the dorm about postponing physical education classes. The second one is shocked by the fact that at that moment, Bai already knew about the apocalypse. Ma says that even if he didn't know, the training helped a lot. The guys remember that it was he who warned everyone. Suddenly, the guys notice that Wei has blushed while looking at her tablet. She quickly says nothing and goes into the room, warning no one to come in. The girl enters the room thinking about Baya. She remembers how she had just been texting with Songye, and she had hinted at Chen's closeness with all the girls in a row. She sheepishly suggests that they are close and even more, with several at the same time. As Wei walks out into the corridor, he accidentally overhears Loping and Feng talking around the corner about how they don't trust Bai. They think that Bai is just bragging about his alliance with the queen. Meanwhile, Chen flies to Hanshao's sleepy house and apologizes for being late in the real world. He is met by Meng, the king of Han, and someone else. Han greets, noting that Bai is more handsome than rumored. Meng thinks the king is a flatterer, but he says he is sincere. The third masked man introduces himself as Crow, with the ability to embody fears. Han mentions his mental control. Bai consoles the king that despite his lack of ability, he is lucky. If the king had gotten into trouble the day before yesterday, even Meng wouldn't have saved him. After all, it was only then that the girl learned that her totem allowed her not only to call into her dream, but also to come to someone else's. Meng confirms. Bai urges the king to tell his complaint as the sleep will not last long. Han talks about the exclusive mission and conversation on the road. The hospital from the mission had already become part of the mission by the time Han found it. He says he went there once, but came back straight away. It's all because he can't defeat the levels of these monsters alone. Bai nods and calls up the notification to lead the team in the hospital. Afterwards, they notice a strong monster, but Meng says that something is wrong. A zombie nurse is approaching them. The first to try is Crow. The zombie rushes straight at him. He embodies her fear in the form of a giant scarecrow, and the zombie suddenly slows down. The nurse falls, her eyes wide with horror, her heart pounding. The crow snaps his fingers and the zombie dies of horror. He gets points for killing the crazy nurse. The boys take turns admiring Crow's ability. They gain a useful offensive skill, Howl. The team decides that the skill will remain with Meng. She takes off and learns her new skill. Chen suggests using it immediately, but the girl is afraid that it will summon unwanted monsters. The leader explains that it takes a long time to kill the monsters one by one, but this way they will all crawl out. Meng flies higher and activates screams and howls. All the creatures immediately begin to crawl towards them. Bai is pleased with the effect. Han is scared that there are too many monsters, but Crow stands up to defend himself. The girl also asks anxiously whether there should be so many of them. Bai calmly replies that this is a reason to try out new skills. Han is calmed by the leader's words and unleashes a hail of knives on the evil spirits. The crow releases ropes of darkness, like the embodiment of fears. Meng bombs them with a grenade launcher. Others admire her ingenuity and ability to recreate whatever she wants. The crow wonders anxiously why the leader hasn't entered the battle yet. Meanwhile, Bai releases his claws and waits for a full recharge. Finally, they are ready, and the guy opens the ground with an earthen spike. Thousands of spikes pierce all the creatures at once. The guys watch in amazement as the leader's skill in action. Han sees 2 more zombies behind Bai and rushes to help. But the leader stops him, saying that he left those 2 behind on purpose. He's going to absorb them and see memories he's never had before. Suddenly, he sees a pentagram on the victim, as she hangs on the cross and screams in confusion. Head nurse Kang begged them not to approach, but a crazy woman could only be used as a victim. The nurses continued to discuss her story. She was very kind and beautiful, but suddenly she went crazy. But she kept repeating the number 16. Perhaps this is connected with the demonic seal. At that time, Chenbai's level was already above the acceptable level, and he simply read an article on the Evolvers forum and forgot about it. They began to look for clues for Han Xiao's mission. They will most likely encounter some pretty strong monsters here. They lured all the monsters out of the building, but after searching 3 floors, they found no evidence. And for some reason, the dungeon boss didn't do anything. Perhaps he was afraid of Chenbai. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard from the darkness. It was the director of the Red Star Psychiatric Hospital, one of the 72 pillars of Solomon and messenger of the 16th Supreme Demon. He decided that it was their destiny to become a victim of his master, and if the girl agreed to serve him faithfully and produce offspring from him, then he would spare her. But this was not part of her plans. Chenbai turned to him and asked him to prove what he was capable of and not just talk. The demon decided to show them everything, and he asked the owner to give him his power, and he tried it on people. It was the type of demon that constantly subjected them to psychological pressure, and it had to be dealt with quickly. Chenbai started to attack him, but the demon didn't care and decided to have some fun with him. After all, Chenbai won't be able to break through the hellfire anyway, and if he does, he will fall from psychological pressure. He will be unable to approach or run away, and in this hopeless situation, he will show his despair. But then Han Xiao used the expansion skill and the pressure disappeared, but he himself did not understand how he managed to do it. Hearing his name, the demon said that he was a descendant of the Han family and a relative of the owner. His hellfire could yet roast them all. But everyone started laughing at him, calling him their master's little dog. But the Han family are traitors, and if he kills one of them, he will even receive a reward. He was about to unleash hellfire to turn them into ashes. But this could not be allowed, and it had to be stopped immediately. But the demon suddenly began to sneeze. What Chenbai did worked a little later than he expected, and it seemed like the demon had some intelligence. He used the skill of non-stop sneezing but improved it. Now I was called influenza lung infection. The disease progressed very quickly. Soon he lost the ability to breathe, and the dungeon boss was defeated. The rest tried their best not to get sick. Chenbai calmed them down and said that he was not going to infect them. Everyone began to praise Chenbai for his amazing skills. He received advice in the release of a strategy video. The mission was not finished. The clues were somewhere nearby. Chenbai wanted to post a walkthrough video and asked others if they would hide their identities. And everyone agreed. The video has already started to be viewed. But despite his hidden appearance, many recognized him. And someone said that he was lying. After all, he was supposed to be in the hotel room. The video showed that he was very strong, but it didn't show that there was a group of survivors somewhere. And this got me thinking. If Chenbai did organize a group, it was only to support himself. But everyone knew that Chenbai had a bad relationship with Li Feng, and she asked to look at what she sent, and they started watching the video. The video showed a wall of flesh and blood. It defended the settlement and tried to kill with corpses. And also Shive filmed the settlement itself. At the foot there were the most people, and everyone who came for 1 coin a day was welcome here. Entire families lived on the mountainside, and there were plans to expand this territory. At the top of the mountain was the safest area with villas. And most likely, Shive will also have to live here. In the meantime, it was necessary to go to the dungeon to train. And some people became curious about how many women Chenbai had. But the video was about something completely different. They didn't know that Chenbai was so powerful, but they didn't want her to become his woman. But this was not what Shive had in mind. But Chenbai was very promiscuous and had many girls, and he only needed her. But she won't let him near her. Shivi wasn't interested because she had rejected him many times. She didn't feel anything for him, and she didn't like him. At this time, the mission continued to be carried out within the hospital walls. The devil refined Chenbai's blood, and the blood factor was isolated. It was a prop of weak devil blood. The selection created the props. They were looking for something else useful, and they found a scroll of level A messages, and also a drawing of armor and equipment parts of level D. Chenbai divided the spoils, and everyone agreed with this. And the last step was to find clues for the mission. And it's possible that they were located precisely behind this door, but something unknown awaited them there. It was a statue of Zapai, the 16th of the 72 Pillars of Solomon. Within her was the power of Zapai. About 100 years ago, a girl from the Han family fell in love with a member of the Ji family. Since then, in every generation of the Han family, twin dragons and phoenixes have been born. Girls from this family become brides of members of the Ji family, and boys get married and start a family. More than 10 years ago, Han Xiao's father learned of the Han family's heritage and wanted to escape the fate. And so that his daughter would not be forced to stay in that hospital for the rest of her life, he decided to kill her. Zhao Jiangling stopped Han Yun and reported everything to the Ji family, and because of this betrayal, Han Yun was killed. The Jai family took Han Xiao's sister in and raised her. Zhao Jiangling received devil's blood as a reward. All this was described in the diary, and there were records of merits and awards and other notes, as well as personal thoughts. Now the next task has appeared, but Chen Bai suspected that something was wrong with this statue, and indeed the statue opened the entrance to a secret room. They didn't understand what they were supposed to do next, and this statue may have been formed after the apocalypse. Chen Bai asked why he was thinking about this and what happened to his father. All his life he was an ordinary person, but he turned into a zombie who was different from others. But it had nothing to do with demons. He turned into a zombie covered in green and purple stuff, and it scared him a lot. I'm afraid to approach him. He quickly learned to control his skill. Perhaps he became a plague zombie. And Chen Bai asked to take him to the chemical factory. And Chen Bai decided to discuss all the other issues later after she was in the city. This time everything went well, and Chen Bai even received hints about the mission. But when he woke up in the hotel, he realized that everyone was sick. But he warned no one to enter the room because he had released several viruses there just in case. But he removed the viruses and soon everyone should be restored. And Chen Bai learned that Zhang Luoping wanted to kill him. After all, he and Li Feng didn't believe his words about the safety of the settlement, and so she showed the video. And he said that all the problems were because of Chen Bai. He constantly threatened the man who wanted to talk to her. And if it weren't for Song Ge, he would have continued to impose himself. We haven't been to this hotel yet, and the days feel like years. And she was very glad that Chen Bai was so strong. Zhang Luoping had been trapped in that trap for a long time, and she hated him so much, and she wanted him to die. One kiss was enough to make him angry. In the forest outside the city, Chen Bai received a request to start a voice chat. The girl reported that they met with Shiwei and were already returning. Also, recently people have been discussing a mysterious chat group of experts on the forum. And in this group, Chen Bai was the leader. Perhaps these people will join them later. And Chen Bai asked to send him the posts with the most comments. And it seems the time has passed to give the group a name. This will help not only to gain influence, but also to attract support. He finally found the place where he received a C-rank mission for demon hunters in his past life. Chen Yiqiang said that he needed to quickly complete the second task and return and also receive the reward. In his past life, in order to earn some gold coins, he believed Brother Chiang's lie, joined him, and entered this location. But this Brother Chiang made a mistake. Because of him, the villagers summoned the demon, and he ran away with his team. Did not want to use their lives to weaken the demon. But when everyone realized that it was a trap, he had already taken measures and surrounded the battlefield and killed everyone who wanted to escape. Brother Chiang recruited about 100 people, and they were individuals in small groups trying to survive. Many people died because of him and the demon. Having admitted that there was no way out, the remaining people began to fight the demon. Only when the last man fell did Brother Chiang lead the team towards the tired demon. But he had no idea that Chen Bai was alive. He took advantage of the moment to escape and walked out of there. He hid and escaped using a mechanism that could take him to the edge of the location. Coincidentally, the book was written at the very moment when he was about to leave the world. They killed the demon and began to return. Thus, the mission scroll for transferring the job of a demon hunter was obtained. They changed the conditions in the middle of the fight, and all the people died, and they ended up losing their best prey. It was a pity that he couldn't see Brother Chiang's expression at that moment. In his previous life, Chen Yiqiang killed the demon and was the first to clear the location. So no one will get ahead of him. Who could have discovered this place so early? Brother Zhang Long was right. It was possible to leave here after completing the second mission. Suddenly, Chen Bai came out to them, and he decided to take on the boss. He didn't expect them to discover this place so early. They warned him to be careful. And Chen Bai came face to face with the demon. He even began to miss such situations because he always killed such demons in groups. As a demon hunter, he has killed a number of his kind, and judging by the familiar sensations, his skills have not deteriorated. The rest began to receive awards, which means the boss was defeated. Chen Bai asked why they came back since they were going to divide the spoils. But they did not divide the spoils without him, but he had already seen his true face. Awards began to appear in Chen Bai's hands. He asked if they liked anything. They showed him the potions they had obtained, and they handed them over to him. And they said that they returned to make friends with him, and not to find out more about him. His younger brother was in the western region of Wuchang, and it would be bad if he wandered into Chen Bai's territory. He realized that this guy wanted to know what he was doing here, and said that he was from Jiangcheng. He replied that they had recently started visiting him often, and were now clearing the area around him, and asked if they could help each other with anything. Now Chen Bai understood why Meng Meng wasn't responding. Perhaps she had been cleared out. But suddenly a message came from Meng Meng. He realized that something was wrong, and he must die. Chen Bai could only read fragments and did not know how Meng Meng lived in particular. Apparently, first he needs to survive, and the person who told him about the boss seemed to know a lot. Strangers knocked on Meng Meng's door. They warned that if the door was not opened, they would enter themselves. She tried to dissuade them from entering. I heard that there was a girl behind the door and they started making fun of her. But Meng Meng was very serious. And from her scream, blood began to flow from their ears. After that second of screaming, she spent almost all her energy. Behind the door, everyone was dead. But the others realized that she wouldn't be able to use the mental skill anytime soon. And they started knocking on her door again. And having broken down the door, they entered to her. Now she could probably release the black flame once. And she succeeded. Now she really has used up all her energy. And others came in through the door and told her to die or beg on her knees. She didn't want to fall into their hands at any cost. Realizing that she wouldn't beg, they decided to have fun with her. They grabbed her. And at that moment, Chen Bai flew into the room. And with one blow, he took it away from them. And he carefully took her in his arms. No one could offend his student and then leave alive. Another one has arrived. It was necessary to kill him immediately. The girl lay on the sofa and she was getting worse and worse. Physical and mental exhaustion led her to hallucinations, and Chen Bai tried to find out where she was now, while she was still with them. Suddenly, a guy with an axe crept up from behind and swung his arm to strike. But Chen Bai with one blow slammed his head into the ceiling. After all, no one dared to harm her. At this time, Zhang Long entered the door. His appearance meant that Chen Yiqian's team was destroyed. Falling to his knees, he said that it was he who came up with the plan for them to attack Chen Bai. And now none of the relatives of Chen Yiqian's closest friends are left. Chen Bai asked what happened to his friends and relatives then. The guy was very scared because he only had a wife and a child. And this all happened because of his research talent, because Chen Yiqian threatened him so that he would join them. If his talent was ordinary, he would have been killed by both his neighbors and friends. Chen Bai knew that he had an unusual talent, and the guy was the one who warned him to be careful with the boss and asked if he was willing to follow him to Jiangcheng. The guy didn't know what to answer. Chen Bai respected his choice and did not pressure him. Zhang Long was hesitant about going, since his family had been used and oppressed before. Chen Bai was willing to accept his family, but there wasn't enough room for all the people, so it was better to stay in Wuchang and stabilize the situation. And he gave the guy a potion that increased his strength. Chen Bai also sent him a request from his friends, and asked him to write when the situation returned to normal, and then decide whether to stay in Wuchang or move to Jiangcheng. Chen Bai opened his inventory and saw that one of the items had changed after he received the potion for Zhang Long. He remembered how he hid the objects and the mutation had not yet occurred. He decided to try to move them. It was a demon blood potion because his eyes were always looking at the potion and his mouth was open. Maybe he wanted to take it. The inferior potions were useless to Chen Bai, so he decided to give them a try. The demon wanted absolutely everything, and maybe he will be able to unlock some functions, or he will just eat everything. After 5 minutes, the demon smiled contentedly. But Chen Bai was not very pleased, because he fed him so many potions, and he only gave him one. Suddenly, the demon spat something out. Chen Bai thought he was sick. Well, it was just the usual essence of demonic blood. Thus, Chen Bai had an inexhaustible supply of demon blood essence. And he was in such a hurry to help Meng Men that she didn't even have time to look through the scroll with the task to obtain abilities. The abyss was full of possibilities and dangers. Suddenly, Meng Meng began to come to her senses. She was very happy to see him nearby. She was still weak, but wanted to enjoy her physical training classes. But Chen Bai thought that an upgrade would be of great benefit. But to upgrade, she needed too much experience in the dream world. She had already visited almost all the monsters nearby. She had no opportunity to travel, and she did not find any dungeons. Chen Bai suggested that she return to the river city after she had rested, since there were plenty of dungeons. The girl felt well and was ready to leave immediately, but it would take them too long to get to Wuhan on foot. He picked her up in his arms and they took off. When they arrived at the place, the scenery changed dramatically, and Chen Bai explained to her the difference between a secret place and a dungeon. She promised to remember all this information, and she asked if she needed to distract the monsters onto herself. But this was not a dream world, and the skills used were crucial. You were safer near the entrance, so it was better for her to wait outside. In the third task, something changed. Now you had to kill demonic servants and dark priests, and the reward for the task was no longer a blood potion. But in any case, the boss had to be killed first. Chen Bai was spotted in the central square. The offender was to become an offering to the demons. The absorption process has begun. Chen Bai could still use the absorption process to obtain demon blood, so he didn't bother to be nice. From the lower bosses, it was also possible to extract a blood potion, and it was of the same level as the boss. Surprisingly, it was also possible to extract a blood potion from elite bosses, but not from ordinary monsters. At the entrance to the secret village, the girl thought about how Chen Bai had already dealt with the boss and killed many small bosses and elite monsters. She hoped that he would not forget about her and was very sorry that she was not allowed to at least touch the boss. Suddenly, she heard him tell her to get ready to use her abilities. He shouted to use his strongest deadly ability. He told her not to be afraid, because these monsters were already battered, and everything would be fine with her spiritual strength. And she began to carry out the order. And this time, she reached the 6th level of experience, and Chenbai reached the 9th. She thanked him for bringing the monsters to her. At that moment, an incoming video call came in. The girls asked for help. A goblin arrived in the city who calls himself the God of Trade. And it was unclear how he ended up in the settlement. He came to present a silver order to build an A-class city as an investment. But the condition was that the goblin trading tent had to be established in the best part of the city, and it had to be exempt from paying taxes. High-level orders on buildings were quite rare, and such investment would only bring benefits. But there was one problem: all this had to be done immediately. The siege of monsters that the construction will cause will be difficult to cope with, given the current state of the settlement. It was necessary to either drag out time or accept this investment now. Chenbai himself had already accepted him as an investment, and he advised him to praise the merchant and mention him in conversation. The girl understood everything. Chenbai offered Meng to choose something from his equipment that she could use. They needed to get to the settlement very quickly, and she might not be able to withstand his maximum speed. She prepared well for the flight. At this time, the girls decided to accept Lado's offer. The merchant praised her for her determination. In response, she began to praise him. According to Lado, she will later turn this place into the best city-state. And when the time came, she needed to take care of the goblin trading tent. As the conversation continued, she did not forget to mention Chenbai, but Lado didn't remember him right away. And Michelle named him, reminding him that he had already accepted investments. Remembering him, the merchant turned away and began to select new offers. At first, Michelle was afraid that he had changed his mind about investing. But after learning that Chenbai was the manager of this settlement, he picked something else for them. It was a golden order to build a C-class city. If he can return, they will have a chance to repel the attack of the C-class monsters. The areas covered were much larger compared to the A-class. The danger level was much higher, and Lado asked again if she was ready to accept this offer. She agreed because as long as Emperor Bai was here, she was not afraid of anything. Michelle ran out to greet Chenbai. He asked to tell us about the current situation right away. And while he was carrying Meng to the bedroom, Michelle was bringing him up to speed. Chenbai thanked her for her good work. During his absence, they raided the sewer dungeon and collected the last pieces of the plague kit. Chenbai thanked Michelle again and realized that he had chosen her correctly. But Michelle was still a little worried. Bai makes it clear that this girl is his student, whose abilities are not inferior to his. He asks the queen to take care of Meng and tell him when she wakes up. Chen explains that this snoring girl is the key to protecting the settlement. The boy leaves to face the monster attack with the queen. Giants and zombies flock to the city walls of Dongshan Abbey. Bai asks incredulously if this is the siege from the mission. He reflects on how many more high-level monsters there are now compared to his previous life. He looks down on the endless crowds that have no end in sight. On the other side of the wall, the queen announces to the inhabitants that they will have to endure a siege for 5 days. The residents whisper to each other in fear. The queen reassures them that they have the strongest walls and reliable resources with military support. Adds that there are hundreds of B-class talents here, also a dozen masters of classes A and C. Thinking about Bai and Meng, he adds about the 2 strongest people of the SSS class. The queen announces that victory will be theirs, and in 5 days they will have the largest territory in the world. The consolation in the form of upcoming comfort and convenience works, and people begin to rejoice. There is 1 minute left before the attack, and the queen calls on the inhabitants to earn money and experience. The people rejoice and rejoice. Chen praises the woman's speech, to which she hears about her hopes for him and Meng. Bai notes the little girl's talent as a megaphone and sound amplifier. Afterwards, he asks Lu Li if everything is ready for the broadcast. Chen nods contentedly and orders the broadcast to begin. The time before the attack starts is running out, and the monsters are suddenly covered in additional reinforced armor. The queen's assistant is in a panic because they were supposed to kill weakened zombies, not strengthened mutants. Bai and the queen know what was about to happen, because the goblin also increased the reward. Bai releases his tentacles and rushes straight into the crowd of mutants. He uses the plague infection skill, reducing the resistance of everyone in contact with him. The guy deftly infects one after another without stopping. The damage is small, but it makes defending the city much easier. Suddenly, infected zombies begin to gather into separate clans and stay away from others. Chen guesses that there is a leader among the monsters who controls them. The problem is that it will take a long time to find the leader, even though weakened zombies will be easier to kill. If he goes searching, then everyone who remains on the defensive will suffer. On the other hand, if you don't leave now, it will be impossible to break through the crowds later. The leader will order the zombies to attack from all sides, and the townspeople will scatter, leaving the walls. Bai realizes that he will need Meng Meng's help to solve the problem. The guy sends the girl mental orders to wake up. The girl wakes up, but at first she cannot understand where she is and what is happening. She contacts Bai, who invites her to join the fight in the dream. The guy promises to describe the monsters in detail so that she can find them through dreams. Meng Meng reads a detailed description of who needs to be found. Afterwards, she asks Songye not to let anyone near her, since she will now be sleeping. Manson finds himself on top of a wall and sees hordes of zombies. The girl takes control of the dream and causes a hail of boulders to fall with a whistle. Afterwards, she decides to find the zombie leader that Bai told her about. The girl materializes wings and soars into the sky. At the end of the first day, Chen asks the queen how many casualties they have suffered, but she says only a few people. She says the walls are not damaged and Bai can rest a little. The guy refuses, citing the negative state of affairs. He tells her about the leader of the zombies and mentions that there were only a few special ones today. The guy assumes that the leader is gathering strength for the final battle. Not far away, Meng Meng appears, happily running towards the guy, and Song's assistant. Chen asks the queen not to let Lu Li film it. Bai explains this by saying that the girl's unique ability cannot be shown to everyone. In response to Chen's question, Meng Meng replies that she has not found the leader. She says she was unable to track it due to her lack of surveillance skills, but she knows the approximate direction. Bai calms the girl down, praising her for her work. Meng Meng asks Songye to hand over the map. The girl shows several places where special zombies gather in large numbers. There are a couple hundred tall, fat men near the farmer's market. 3 more places where armless, fast, and strong zombies gathered by faction. Bai calculates that these are zombies of the second stage of evolution, and can defeat them in one go. The queen asks what their strength is. Chen explains that there are about 1,000 variations of the second level. There is a chance to win, but there is one detail. He thinks that if instead of attacking Baya they storm the city, almost everyone will die. The queen takes it upon herself to find masters with tracking ability to find the leader. Bai stops her because he has a candidate. The guy writes to a certain Han and asks him for help. On the morning of the second day, Han enters the Dongshan cottage area and looks around. The boy slyly asks if they will give him a cottage here if he moves, and Bai promises. Han is delighted and is ready to begin the mission. Meng Meng wonders which mutants should be eliminated first. Bai tells everyone to go to the TV tower on the shore. Mutants are climbing the walls of the TV tower. Bai says that hunters are the most dangerous because they are not stopped by walls. Chen trains Han to help kill the leader who will prevent the hunters from being killed. The guy takes Meng Meng and together they fly over the city. Han watches, wondering what he needs to do to levitate. Meng Meng uses a screen blast to knock all the zombies off the wall of the TV tower. She is happy that she is very strong in the dream world. She hangs in the air and watches as the monsters rush towards her. The girl is frightened when she sees the speed at which the hunter is rushing towards her. Judging by how quickly the monsters are jumping on her, she's finished. She no longer has time to dodge. And suddenly Bai orders her to freeze from behind. Before Meng Meng could even realize it, Chen was spinning around using the body of fire skill. The monsters pierce with energy peaks, and the girl rushes to help, sending fiery whirlwinds at the enemies. Bai absorbs the last elite mutant and gets a lot of points. Meng Meng has about 300 elite monsters that came from nearby cities. Chen is thinking about killing the leader as quickly as possible. The girl happily offers to clear out another zombie gathering point. Bai hears the whistle of a knife flying towards him with a note from Han that he has found the leader. It turns out that the leader is in their rear, which makes him not stupid. Han Xiao happily and impatiently calls to fight the boss right now. Bai says that the 3 of them will have to return to the real world from the dreams to fight. When asked why, Bai explains that this is the only way to film everything live and gain fame. The guy thanks Han and promises him a reward. Chen is about to wake up, but finally allows Meng Meng and Han to clear out a couple more elite zombies. He recommends shriekers, which don't attack but scream loudly, empowering other zombies. The 2 assistants promise to do it, and Bai says goodbye. The guy stands on the edge of the cliff and looks at the supposed place, smelling a strong virus. A giant bat-like creature approaches the guy from behind and attacks, cutting through the air with its wings. Bai thinks it's a hunter, even though his speed is even higher. The guy releases his tentacles, wondering if these are the leader's own guards. Chen decides to resort to a feint and pretend to be weakened. During this time, he continues to fight the monster, but not at full strength. He waits for the right moment and cuts the mutant lengthwise. The tentacles quickly engulf the level 4 hunter, and Bai gains a lot of virus points. As a reward, the guy gets a new form of hands in the form of sharp knives. Bai enjoys testing his powerful spiritual energy. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees a monster in the branches of a tree and laughs that it hasn't escaped. The monster emerges from hiding, ready to defend itself. Chen flies towards him and uses sharp knives instead of hands to cut off all of his opponent's limbs. He is even disappointed that he was able to defeat this weak boss so easily. Suddenly, the queen jumps out from somewhere. throws herself on the guy's neck and congratulates him on killing the leader. Following her, more girls appear, who also congratulate Bei on his victory and are delighted. Chen relaxes and lets the girls hang on him. A whirlwind appears and the girls dissolve into thin air, and Bai says that he is disgraced by such illusions. These mirages could not overcome logic, which means that the leader is much more stupid than Chen. The live chat is in full swing with heated arguments, and eventually someone lures viewers to watch the assault on the third front. At this moment, the wall of the monastery is attacked by second-level fat zombies, and they throw ordinary zombies high up onto the wall. The queen commands that those in the air be killed first. The defense is made up of B-class masters, the throwers, and C-class masters, who control the arrows. There are also masters fighting who control air resistance. The mutant hits the wall and deafens the residents and craftsmen with terrible sounds. People are running in panic as the fourth section of the wall is destroyed and zombies are being thrown in. The queen tries to stop the people and asks them to hold the line. With the help of an amethyst blade, she destroys the largest of the monsters. She encourages the others by saying that they need to survive one more wave until Bai defeats the leader. The commentators call to switch to Bei, who at this time is fighting with a huge despot stalker. The audience is briefly described as Bai waiting for the chief to call for reinforcements so he can attack everyone. There is also a fiery heretic rushing around, which Chen ignores so as not to distract himself from the leader. The chieftain's last assistant, Meat Mountain, appears, and Chen attacks him with sharp knives and hellfire. Bai literally begins to cut a passage through the body of the huge fat man. Bai wins and viewers write that zombie chaos is happening at the wall. Meat Mountain is almost defeated. With a powerful final blow, Bai splits the carcass across. Now he turns his attention to the attacking stalker, who has been weakened by the effects of the plague. Chen attacks back, releasing his claws. He feels a powerful resistance to the hellfire and wants to take it for himself. The heretic joins them, and then finally Chen destroys them all at once. Bai happily collects all the equipment from killed monsters, even if it is at a higher level than needed. Everything that has been collected is combined with the scroll, and the audience is eager to see what has happened. The result is rank C biochemical gloves, which doesn't suit the guy. The chieftain's brain grants power over 3 creatures no higher than the owner, and the stalker's bone temporarily increases speed and agility. The Meat Mountain's muscles restore strength and flesh, and the heretic's heart provides a protective field. Suddenly, the system explains that after a certain number of normal and elite mutants are killed, a Horcrux appears. Bai is surprised, but he's more concerned about whether he can increase his level by absorbing the remains. Its tentacles reach out and suck in each of the defeated at once. By absorbing, Bei unlocks several new skills and forms. He opens the panel and sorts the glasses. Bai is excited about the supposed new abilities and the Horcrux the gloves will turn into. First, he tries the air dash to move and change direction in the air. At the cottage town, Lu Li informs the queen that Chen has finished, and she is preparing the cameras for the live broadcast. Zikyong receives this message while Sushin is treating her in a tent by the wall. The queen thanks her assistant for her help and invites her to rest after the current wave. But the girl refuses, because many wounded still need to be treated. And yet Z insists on her rest so as not to upset Bai. She adds that during the victory celebration, the sisters will need her recovery skill. A girl runs into the room and tells the queen that the situation is not very good. Many zombies retreated, but those who were near the city became even more aggressive. 3 sections of the city wall are about to be breached. The city's firepower cannot stop high-level zombies. Shiwei at this time tries to slow down the enemy by creating walls of flesh and blood, but they very quickly devour her. Her eyes bleed from the strain and prolonged use of the all-seeing eye. The women watch anxiously as Shiwei's condition worsens. The queen understands that Xiaogi is very good at choosing friends. She goes to the front lines and asks Xiao to send someone to replace Shiwei. Reinforcements from the townspeople arrive at the city wall. Leng Xiong yells at her sister not to come near because the zombies are very fast and she won't help. She rushes into attack with a weapon. Then her sister calls on everyone to come with her to help. Bai appears nearby and reproaches the girl for her frivolity. Chen himself runs to attack and asks to convey that the leader is dead, and that he will handle the rest himself. The girl rejoices at the return of Bai and the death of the leader. Chen puts all his new abilities into action, to the delight of the residents. 4 days pass. The city and the wall are shrouded in clouds of smoke and dust. Chen discusses with the queen that the losses over the past few days have been enormous, and the wall is almost destroyed. Z bitterly notes that they overestimated themselves and underestimated their opponent, and without Bai and Meng Meng, they would not have coped. Suddenly, a goblin appears among them, surprised by their sadness. He argues that the battlefield could have been worse, but they did a perfect job. The merchant offers them to start building the first city-state. Everyone receives their rewards, and the queen worries that there will be more events. Bai takes her to where she can use the order. Later, at the base of the mountain, residents hear a frightening knock from underground. It turns out to be a ball. the heart of the city, which leads to the founding of the city-state. The residents are surprised to hear that the heart of the city can only belong to the queen. Bai and Z appear, discussing the location of the future city. She explains in detail why her chosen location is advantageous and progressive. Chen praises her wisdom and composure, and asks her to build their common state herself. Z looks back at the merchant Lei Duo and wants to ask him something. The queen tells the goblin that she wants to hand over the rule of the city to Baiyu. He replies that he doesn't care. The main thing is that the promised goblin chamber is built in the right place. Z hands over the authority to Chen and asks him to begin. The guy approaches the heart, and the system immediately updates, and Baidi answers the request for the name of the city of Bai. Chen decides to restore the feud and merges with the heart, which increases his stats by an incredible amount. The system also notifies about receiving the highest level of power of the queen. Each of the jubilant residents receives a few points for the battle with the mutants. The goblin also applauds, watching from the side. Lei Du explains his joy by the fact that everyone got what they wanted. He was very pleased with the investment results. Now it was time for Leido to continue his journey, and Chen Bai had to fulfill his demand as soon as possible. But this wish was very difficult to fulfill. But Leido believed in him. Chen Bai handed over the rewards received for building the Golden City. It was the Galaxy Supercomputer Core and Integrated Automatic Production Line. Thanks to these things, the development of graying will go very far. But now everything was very different from the past. The firearms produced on this line are different from those produced before the apocalypse. It was necessary to get rid of the ideas that had formed before the end of the world, and the system of governing the city-state now also did not represent anything special. But in the future, when there are more plans for the city-state, her eyes will simply run wild. For example, a biological reserve center can clone a body and give a second life. In the future, their city will definitely become the strongest among all the city-states. During this time, Meng Meng had a great time in the dream world and gained 3 new skills, and Meng Meng shared the description of the skills with him. Now, the dream world totem does not need to look at a person to put him to sleep, and in combination with the sleepiness effect, this can be effective in real combat. Meng Meng remembered that Chen Bai had spoken of such a combination after looking at her skill tree. The third skill was entering and exiting dreams. Chen Bai clarified whether this was a movement ability. It was indeed so. He praised her for her choice of skills. Meng Meng asked him to help her study the effect of her new skills, and Chen Bai agreed. And he asked Zixiong to find several people with different levels of ability to try out these skills. But she asked him not to stay late because everyone wanted to award the head of the city in the evening. And Xiaoge prepared a surprise for him. The girls were languishing in anticipation of Chen Bai. One of them asked if they had enough confidence to follow her and defeat Chen Bai in this night battle. They were of course prepared, but they asked Xiaoge not to suffer consciousness like before anything happened. She screamed that she had already spent all her free improvement points on her physical training. Meng Meng was looking for a dungeon nearby to gain experience points, and Chen Bai asked him to tell her to come see him afterwards. Everyone wanted to hear his advice on combat techniques and skill selection. It was indeed so, but for some, the tree was almost empty, and it was unclear what kind of help they might need from it. But they wanted any advice from him, and Chen Bai said to show him their skill trees. All the girls were very happy, and he began to give advice. For example, she needed to make the evolution of Amethyst a priority, and then the strengthening of consciousness. After all, the Amethyst gaze, coupled with its boundless depth and noble look, helped her understand the enemy and even control his abilities. Amethyst's gaze is able to instantly recognize characteristics. Anyone who makes eye contact with her will be stunned and lose their ability to navigate. Now it's Shivi's turn to look at the characteristics. First they unlocked the all-seeing eye and then saw what I see. Her basic skills were already amazing. The illusion of Lu Li's image allowed miracles to be performed. This skill had an unusual effect. If the enemy couldn't recognize the illusion, it would become reality for him. For example, if he believes that the atomic bomb in the illusion is real, then he will actually be hit by it. Therefore, this skill had no limit on the damage it could deal. But Li didn't have the ability to mask energy waves or aura, so she was easy to spot. Now it was Su Xin's turn, and her quick recovery. She needed to distribute points between the skills that restored the stamina of the flesh and the mind. Her ability was simple but practical. Now it was Ling's turn to concentrate. Next was the B-class attention concentration Lingu. Her ability only accelerated the thought process, but it was a great talent for duels. She needed to choose skills that would help her make decisions in battles, and practice one-on-one with opponents of different skills. By thanking him, she wanted to express her appreciation through actions, because she was completely focused on him. Well, that was wrong, and Chen Bai snapped his fingers to make the girl wake up. She needed to learn how and what she focused on. Otherwise, this talent could become a curse. Now it was the turn of another girl with the innate C-class gift of increasing her experience points and skill proficiency. Once she levels up, her abilities will become 10 times better, and she will be 10 times faster than a normal person. Although her physical strength would never surpass Chen Bai's physical strength, she would be able to defeat him using unusual techniques, but his words left her a little offended. Chen Bai gave them all advice on their future development. Now everyone had to try hard to make sure that the new inhabitants of the palace did not look down on them and did not let him down. Hearing these words, one of the girls also wanted him to give her advice. Han Xiao thought that Meng Meng's skills were truly amazing, as she was able to drag Chen Bai here. The teleportation range was too great, so Meng Meng didn't feel very well for now. In the city, they did everything that was planned. Now everyone was working to make the city of Baidi ideal. Chen Bai asked how many points he got for building the city here, since he and Meng Meng had killed several special zombies in the dream world. Han Xiao said that when they were in the dream space, the hydrolysis screaming zombies had an incident. He flew using mind control, then fell and died. Chen Bai felt ashamed of him, but he tried to justify himself by saying that no one knew about this except him and Meng Meng, and especially now he wanted to show him the chemical plant. Chen Bai said that he was joking. "I can't go when he's ready." Chen Bai looked at his hand, because the plague mark had been sending him warnings since the moment of teleportation. Apparently, it was related to the chemical plant, where there were a lot of infected zombies. Han Xiao asked Baidi to leave the room. Chen Bai rushed here as soon as order was restored in the city, and was thinking about what kind of reward he could get for this mission. In Jiangcheng, he was afraid to check this mask for fear that Leto would find out that he had hidden it. He didn't even expect that these bloodline potions could be converted into C-class essence, and the most important thing was that there were no restrictions on use. The plant was located just beyond the green fog. The situation at the plant was unknown until the apocalypse. Han Xiao didn't really want to go inside the fog and mold gave him a bad feeling. But as long as Chen Bai was nearby, he had nothing to worry about, because he wanted to take him to where his father worked. After reaching level 10, Chen Bai's abilities improved, and he could now control viruses better. All microorganisms within a radius of 10 meters were under his control. Han Xiao didn't understand how anyone could admire something in such a terrifying place. And suddenly in the sky they saw a monster in the form of a huge mosquito. Chen Bai used his power to destroy it, because he simply hated mosquitoes. Suddenly they saw a mushroom that this mosquito was guarding. Chen Bai warned him not to touch it. If he wanted to die, he just had to smell it, and it would start to rot from his lungs. This mushroom was a fusion of plague virus and bacteria, but Chen Bai bit it off because he was immune to such things. The amount of viruses in one piece of such a mushroom was equivalent to several elite zombies. First, they decided to go to his father's factory. They checked all the areas where the father worked but found nothing. It seems like the clues for the quest were not to be found here. Chen Bai suggested that they find the source of the plague together, but once he told him to run, he should do so immediately. They came to a place where the concentration of plague and viruses was the highest. It was a wastewater treatment tank, and all the water from the chemical plant flowed here. There were 2 deep pools inside. Chen Bai was the first to enter the walls of the reservoir. He ordered Han Xiao to surround himself with internal energy and make sure that the plague did not affect him if he moved too far. Suddenly, a man appeared, whose face was hidden under a hood, and he began to call on the disciples of the sect. Chen Bai hit him first, but he was unable to destroy the defense, even though he used his strongest weapon, the blade. Suddenly he fell to his knees in front of Chen Bai and called him the Almighty, said that they faithfully serve him, impeccably inherit the rituals, and asked to kindle a divine fire so that the blessing of the plague would spread throughout the world. They were not prepared for this turn of events. They really worshipped him and could give him either their life or their soul. And before them was the plague bishop of Fukushima, level 71. The mental perception that Chen Bai received was D-class. He asked the bishop again if he was his lord. He said that the high priest helped him, and he received the plague mark at the beginning of the test and should be their master, the lord of the plague. Chen Bai had heard that in his past lives, the best aspect of high-level talents was having unique abilities, and it seemed like for him, it was being the virus king. They paid well to enter the mission early and accompany Chen Bai. Every participant who came here could gift Chen Bai with a plague sect treasure that matched their level. But they could not give him all the treasures to avoid capture and interference from the cosmic forces. Chen Bai asked if they had any job change scrolls. The bishop had some like that. He handed him the first scroll of the C-rank Plague Knight. The second was a C-rank Insect Lord, and the third and most valuable Son of Fate is SS rank. But Chen Bai asked if there was anything else. The bishop began to explain that it was almost impossible to reach a 300-rank profession at first, and many gods arose from C-rank, A-rank, or even B-rank professions. But Chen Bai only needed a SSS rank class change scroll. The bishop exclaimed that Chen Bai was the god of the future, and the revival of the plague sect was assured. Chen Bai was not interested in anything else. The bishop said that they have one way to get a SSS rank scroll, but there were no guarantees, and Chenbai had to take it himself. The bishop could open a space that led to the biggest plague in the history of the Blue Star, and Chenbai had to enter there, collect the plague seeds buried in history, and use them to create a scroll. And he decided to take advantage of this chance. The bishop sacrificed his life and soul to become a ladder for his god, and paved the way for the plague. A huge mushroom appeared in front of them. It was an exclusive secret institution called the Lamentations of 8 million Souls. Chenbai decided to go there alone. Hanshaw wouldn't dare to enter such a powerful place, because it could only be opened by sacrificing everything. The time for the portal to open was limited, so Chen Bao first decided to bid farewell to Han Xiao, so that he would leave before he was killed by insects or infected with the plague. Walking back out and looking at the plague factory, Han Xiao couldn't believe what he had gone through. There was a heated discussion in the general chat about what had happened. Overlord couldn't believe in such a super powerful person. Shuiquan was shocked by the information about the profession change scrolls, and Yezi was shocked by the bishop. They understood that the difference between them and the emperor was greater than between them and ordinary people. At this time, Chen Bai suddenly saw an hourglass of time in front of him. Having arrived at the secret place, he realized that it was Florence. Looking around, Chen Bai decided that medieval Florence was a true city of world art. But there was no one around except a stranger who was coughing in the gateway and repeating that she was cursed by the gods and afflicted with illness. Coming closer to her, Chen Bai absorbed her virus. It was the Black Death virus. Contact with this virus opened a new quest, Plague Seeds, and now it remains to find out how he could take these seeds. The healed stranger turned out to be a nice girl, and in gratitude she decided to follow him and serve him. Chen Bai just needed to gain fame and have followers, but he asked her not to be baptized, because he was not the messenger of that god. The astonished girl asked who sent him. He introduced himself as the god of the plague and ordered everyone to tell him that he could rid them of the disease. The girl went out into the street and began to call people to the main square to the descending god of the plague. There healing awaited them, and those who coincided with the disease began to come out to her call. She asked those who did not believe her to come and see for themselves, but some thought she had gone mad from illness. She shouted that she was Elena, the daughter of a rich merchant who bequeathed his entire fortune to the church, and now she was healthy. And at her words, more and more people came out into the streets believing her. Elena said that to be healed you don't need any donations, prayers, or bloodletting, you just need to come to the square. She really had no cough or fever. Looking at the situation in the city, Chen Bai assumed that it was the 14th century. Then, in Europe, the Black Death took 25 million lives and in the whole world 80. But if the seeds of the plague are not here, then will he really have to cross the entire globe? Helena ran to him in the square and, not knowing how to properly address him, called him the merciful god of the plague. She shouted that she had gathered as many people as she could. Chen Bai urged everyone to come closer and not be afraid, and by absorbing the virus, he freed them from the torment of the disease. People were healthy again and cried with happiness. Around Chen Bai, words of delight were heard from all sides. People could not believe the miracle. One of the townspeople called him a great representative of the Church of Light, but others corrected him, saying that there was no need to insult the great god of plague like that. People could not hold back their tears of joy and promised to always worship him. Chen Bai told them all to go home to rest and recuperate. After all, there were many more infected children behind them. He did not need their worship and only wanted them to be free from torment. One of the women asked how she could thank him for caring for their sinful souls. Elena suggested not to interfere with God's fight against the plague and to follow her healthy across the bridge of the Arno River to spread the news of God's mercy throughout Florence. But suddenly a wave of fear passed through the crowd because the knights of the church had come to the square. They were informed that there was a man there who imagined himself to be a god and was spreading heretical beliefs, and they ordered those not involved to leave quickly. When they saw Chen Bai, they asked him if he called himself a god. But for them, the plague was a punishment from God, and the god of the plague could not exist, and they rushed at him with swords. But Chen Bai was not afraid, because for him this was an opportunity, a chance to become a god completely, and they plunged their blades into his body. One of the knights raised his sword and shouted that the heretic was finished, and all the sinners should roll in their sins and admit that he was able to deceive them. But the other knights saw that Chen Bai was not even wounded, and they couldn't understand why he was okay. Elena wanted to rush at the knights with a stone in her hand and avenge the god of plague, but he stopped her, saying that he was not wounded. She wanted Chen Bai to punish the stupid ignoramuses of the Church of Light for wanting to kill him, and they stood in amazement and did not know what to do. But Chen Bai did not do this, saying that no matter how many times they hit him, he would continue to free everyone from suffering. The crowd around him rejoiced, because for them he was a real merciful god of the plague. Within 3 days, 90% of the city's residents believed in Chenbai. And on Sunday, there were only 7 people in the Holy See of Light Cathedral. Bishop Haken was sure that he should have ordered the plague god to be killed that day in the square. But Bishop John remained of the same opinion. After all, Chenbai appeared suddenly and was able to cure the plague. It took him only 3 days to heal people throughout the city. He taught his followers how to prevent the disease and control its spread. He cares about people who have not yet recovered. Although his teachings were difficult to understand and included all sorts of obscure words like microorganisms, bacteria, and hygiene, he said nothing about restrictions for his followers and the obligation to make donations. He even said that a merciful God would never force people to kill each other, and if they had killed him that day, the others would have immediately understood who was a demon and who was a god. Bishop Haken was very angry at these words, and he could not understand how Bishop John could not be concerned about the holy throne of light and their Lord. But Bishop John was sure that their Lord was the true Almighty God, and they should not worry about him. They needed to worry about themselves, and he had already sent a message to the Pope about what had happened here. Sitting in the royal chambers, Chenbai held in his hand a concentrate of all the viruses he had absorbed in Florence. It's good that he knew how to time the plague seed, but the progress wasn't that great. It looks like he'll have to travel around the world to finish this concentration. Elena entered the room and said that his most loyal followers were waiting for him. Seeing the god of plague, they rejoiced. He announced to them that the plague in Florence was over, and he was going to other places. But before he left, he would finish leaving. It was a pillar of plague, and those who pray before it will be cured of any disease. He gave them a real miracle. But as soon as he rids everyone of the plague and leaves this world, the pillar will lose its ability, and they must remember what he taught them. After all, diseases and living beings can exist in the world, and if managed correctly, they can even help. They promised to always remember his teachings and the doctrine of the plague sect. The god of plague, when leaving, wished them not to suffer from diseases. The crowd shouted that it was all over and all living beings were immortal. Chenbai was already far away, but he still heard them shouting, because people in this era were obsessed with religion. But this is exactly what he needed in order to collect the seed of the plague. His fame as a god directed people to him and exposed the process of collecting the plague seed. He decided to use the title of god to clear this dungeon. The leader of the Templar Order, Sauron, was summoned by the Pope to the Cathedral of San Pietro due to the failure of the Eastern Campaign and the wrath of the gods. He believed that the demon took advantage of the opportunity and released the plague to bring pain to people, and in such a situation the heretic used the plague to steal the minds of believers. Sauron said that the followers of the plague god hardly have faith and brains, because they so easily believed the swindler. But Dad knew that after he appeared in Florence, the plague really did disappear. Sauron couldn't believe it. From the Pope's point of view, the demon released the plague and took it to make it look like a miracle, deceiving the believers to prevent them from getting to heaven. Sauron considered this tactic to be very vile. The god of plague arrived in the Vatican, and the Pope told the people to bring him to the palace and gather the people there. Sauron's task was to kill Chenbai in front of everyone with the Spear of Longinus. He was glad to fulfill this mission. At this time, Chenbai was brought to the largest palace in the Vatican. The boy ran to tell everyone that the god of plague had arrived because everyone had been waiting for him. After Chenbai left Florence, other cities of the Holy See either closed their gates or did not let him into the city. But after he arrived, he came out to meet a healthy child. It was a very stupid tactic, and he realized that they were going to kill him right on his home territory. But Chenbai was waiting for this as a chance to completely get rid of the problems caused by the Holy See. The crowd was already talking about how the church was going to deal with the heretic who had cured the plague. People were trying to convince that healing was a lie. Dad and Sauron with a spear came out into the yard. Chenbai appreciated their efforts. He said that he came down to this world to save everyone from the plague. And how can a pope lie and mention the name of the Lord, calling him a demon? Dad shouted that this was a lie and God had revealed the truth to him, and Chenbai was a demon from the abyss who had come with evil intent to shake people's faith. And he put forward the theory that it was Chenbai who released the plague and then took it back to deceive everyone. But the people in the crowd wanted to believe in Chenbai and his healing. One of the women shouted why the church wouldn't let him heal everyone from the plague, before punishing him because her child was dying. Dad saw how people's faith was shaken. He shouted that if he had silently cured the plague, then God would have spared him, but his guilt was in deception, and the souls of people will burn forever in hell after death. And Sauron rushed at him with a spear to administer justice. But Chenbai stopped him with just one fingertip, and he said that this blade had already made one mistake and wounded the messenger of God, and there was no need to force him to do it twice. Approaching the Pope, Chenbai said that the whole way from Florence to here, he thought about why the church would not allow him to get rid of the plague. But now, seeing him dressed as his dad, he understood. Dad got angry because he called him a demon. People didn't believe that Dad could be a demon, and Chen Bai decided to test this and struck him. The knights rushed to defend the Pope. Sauron also did not react to this blow in time. Chen Bai summoned the demon that had taken the form of the couple to reveal its true form, and Dad began to transform. He grew horns and lost his human appearance. It was a demon, as Chen Bai had guessed, and its power was too great for the people of that time, and he decided to use this opportunity. The dialogue with the demon was stupid, and even if Chen Bai had released a virus to kill him, people still wouldn't have believed it. But when he came for Meng Meng, he collected the blood essence of an A-rank demon, introduce it into Dad's body and destroy him. And at the same time, the zombie virus has double insurance. And it's not a fact what effect will be activated, because Dad will turn into a monster in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone started screaming demon and ran away as fast as they could. Demon horns and hellfire were a matter of essence, and it was all over, because there were clear rules for using the essence of demon blood. Sauron actually believed that Dad was a demon, but that body will soon be destroyed by the power of the blood. Chen Bai told the believers that the demon, taking advantage of the Pope's position, had rewritten the doctrine and harmed them, and now he dared to prevent him from stopping the plague and saving lives. And today, he will bring divine punishment upon him. And as soon as he shouted die, the demon's body flew into pieces. The crowd heard that he had killed the demon. And Sauron, the chief knight of the church, repented before him for being deceived by the demon and committing a sin by interfering with him. Chen Bai admired his courage and loyalty and reminded him that God does not punish and does not care. Sauron replied that he would immediately gather all those suffering from the plague in this city and bring them to him. After the Vatican eradicated the demon, the role of the church quickly declined, and the plague cult began to flourish. Soon the pillars of plague were erected in the cities and villages of Europe. But the concentration of plague seeds was not yet complete, and Chen Bai continued to travel through Africa, Asia, and Eurasia. After a year, 5 months, and 12 days, he finally finished. Now you just need to take the plague from the pillars, and there were no strong enemies in this task, but it was incredibly difficult. If he had known how long it would take, he might not have undertaken this mission. Especially considering the value of a year and a half in the early post-apocalypse. He wanted to collect all the seeds from the pillars of the plague. In Florence, people prayed at the pillar, and suddenly something started to happen. They learned that the plague god had finished his earthly affairs and was returning to the kingdom of the gods. Elena suggested reading the teachings given to them by God and showing that they know them by heart. They were called plague cults not because they believed in catastrophes and extinction, and not because they honored corruption and death, because they wanted peace and happiness on earth, and wanted people to be joyful and healthy. They needed to understand the plague so that it could no longer cause harm. That is why they wanted to control diseases, because this would help them destroy sins and evil. In their ignorance, they killed each other. But now they have learned of the plague and must no longer hurt either friend or foe. In the future, they will fight side by side to defeat the plague, and the plague will become their weapon. They will fight to protect life, and this will make the demons who sent the plague tremble with fear. This will scare away the bloodthirsty and rude evil spirits, and they will destroy the enemies of life. All things in this world rot and decay, but billions of people, billions of lives, will work together to live forever and never die. All creatures perish, all living things are immortal. The god of plague listened to their voices. They all wanted the light of their god to always illuminate the world. These were their sincere prayers. The mission was completed, and Chen Bai received the coveted scroll. But it didn't look like a possibility. He really wanted to change jobs, but Lado's mission required 2 scrolls and not 2 SSS-level professions. Now it was necessary to obtain the second scroll. But suddenly a notification came that the Plague Factory mission had failed. It seems the source of the plague that needs to be found is something that has changed due to the presence of Pukasumi. And it was interesting what was happening now in the city of the White Emperor. And then Chen Bai realized that in reality, he had spent 4.5 days in the dungeon, not a year and a half. Perhaps because of the hourglass of time, they became one with him, and appeared and disappeared along with his consciousness. But it appeared in the dungeon itself, and this is the only thing that could make the years seem like days. Han Xiao also received a mission, but it was completely different from Chen Bai's. But in the end, he was marked with the plague, and he decided to see what he had been writing in the group in recent days. Chen Bai read the correspondence, and everyone was worried about him. And he wrote in the chat that he received the scroll, but the mission failed because the target disappeared. And he had one idea, but he didn't know if everyone in the group wanted it. And he created a poll to upgrade the group to the League, and Han Xiao invited him to rest at his place. But Chen Bai chose to rest in the villas in the magical city. The area with the villas was really nice, and it seemed safe here. But he didn't know that 2 sisters were hiding in the basement and were terrified of his arrival. In the modern world, it was much more comfortable. and you can use a healing pillow from the dungeon made according to a traditional Chinese recipe. This thing made my sleep better. In the dungeon, it was an ordinary healing pillow, but now it has become an item. Chenbai began to check the items in his inventory. More than half of the things from the dungeon became items, and he remembered that he had brought with him the Spear of Longinus, which Sauron had given him. And I decided to take a closer look at it. To his surprise, she too became an object. Originally, it existed only on the Blue Star. Due to the will of the universe, it became an item with hidden characteristics, and the only such spear is now in his hands. But when he touched it, he felt pain, and his whole palm turned red. Apparently, the spear rejected him. It classified him as one of the 5 types of evil, darkness, depravity, abyss, or filth. He could not use it, weapons opposed him, and he decided to leave it to gather dust in his inventory. But suddenly the door creaked quietly, and a knife flew at Chenbai. But he did not see the enemy, not with the help of a virus detector, but with the help of a thermal imager. Perhaps the knife was controlled by a spirit. Using hellfire should have destroyed it, but then the bedroom would have burned down too. Chenbai only had one skill that could hurt a spirit, and he decided to use the virus points to find some worthwhile skills, and he decided to see what it could do against spiritual power. Now he had enough points. Well, suddenly the attack stopped, and he saw 2 girls, sisters, who were very unhappy that he had broken into their house, and they really wanted to kill him. They were full-fledged spirits with very high intelligence. He could see them with his mental vision and decided to check what he could find with his mental perception. One of them was a C-rank evil spirit, and the second is a spirit of good of the same rank. They were both evolvers. Yang Ji decided to attack with a knife again, but Chenbai grabbed her hand with the release of mental energy and gave her one last chance to stop doing stupid things. Yan Shu asked not to offend her sister. He promised not to offend them if they listened to him, but Yang Ji blamed him for her returned thoughts. Smiling, Chenbai said that she probably meant herself, and he began to ask them questions whether they knew about what happened in this world, and whether they could use the Eveler panel. They knew everything and could use the panel. Chenbai asked why she was only level 2 then. Was she afraid of killing monsters to gain experience? Yansu understood that these monsters were previously people and could not harm them, and they did not harm them. But Chenbai reminded her that sooner or later someone might appear who could harm them, and her talent was very dangerous, because her strength was equal to her emotions, and asked not to let emotions control her power. He asked them to close their eyes, feel the power and control it, and then use their minds to think about what they should do. Yang Jie wanted to help others and be a good person, while Yang Ji wanted to kill anyone who dared to harm her sister. He saw that their rationality was seriously impaired. If he doesn't raise them properly, they will soon become low-level spirits that will act only on instinct and turn into real monsters. To train them, it was necessary to reduce the influence of energy on them. He decided to use telekinesis to play with them. To begin with, I decided to use complete suppression, so that they resist until they are completely exhausted. Chenbai decided to practice forming and controlling with telekinesis. If he controls 2 spirits at the same time, he will be able to control their general state, but he will not be able to control the details. Plus, they were still resisting, so it didn't look very good. Well, suddenly they became quiet and closed their eyes. They no longer resisted, although they still had energy. And all because their minds were restored, and they no longer thought that he was offending them. Well, if they don't learn to control their emotional energy, they will simply become crazy spirits of vengeance. Well, then it would be better to kill them right now. All their clothes were torn to shreds, and they came to their senses, covered with a blanket. And Chenbai asked what they would do if they encountered a zombie attacking a human. One of them will save the person and kill the zombies, and the second will do everything she can, but first she will kill the zombies. It seems that they were healthy again, but one is still good, and the other is evil. Apparently the energy did not lead them to an extreme form of morality. Yanshuk thanked him, and his sister decided to make him feel the consequences of such treatment sooner or later. Chenbai decided to teach them the basic technique from scratch. First, they had to try to release the energy that was gradually accumulating and present it in the form of tissue. They succeeded, and the rest of the energy inside the body should be distributed according to their abilities. The spirit of good used the blessed calm to fight the monsters, and the evil spirit used evil, perverted thoughts. They took out the evil thoughts and collected the good ones and asked Chenbai how they did. Attempts to instill evil thoughts in Chenbai had no effect. It's probably all because she was a bad person there, and evil thoughts didn't affect him. Suddenly he heard a notification that Meng Meng had sent a message. It was interesting that she was in such a hurry even though there was a level restriction. It seems that he didn't hear about the immortal swordsman in his past life. Most likely he died in the dungeon. Chenbai studied the chat conversations. He decided to finish the lesson for today. But the girl still had the strength to kill. This was enough, and they won't be able to cope with other monsters. They promised to listen to him. Inside the dungeon, the girl saw the master, and she introduced him to Gensabusa. He was very glad to meet him, And next to him was Chu Zixong from the group called I Am Actually Heavenly Mortal Swordsman. Chen Bai greeted them and was glad to meet them. He saw that Zixong had many swords. Apparently his talent was in wielding weapons, and he allowed Chen Bai to look at his data, and he appreciated them. The guy decided that his boss was overestimating him. Now that everyone was assembled, it was time to go. It was necessary to climb to the top to complete the journey along Mount Shushan. They were curious about what surprises awaited them along the way. As they walked, fog began to fall upon them. Chen Bai told them to be careful and watch their step, and this was most likely the first obstacle. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the stairs. Chen rushes after the stranger, but no matter how close he gets, he still remains at the same distance. The guy notices this and guesses what it means. The stranger mutters the same thing, and Chen releases his tentacles, throwing them towards the mirage. His bonds pass through, and when his friends ask, Bai says that it is an illusion. Shu notices that the mirage is muttering about the obstacles of the elements of heaven and earth. Another one says thoughtfully that the fog could mean water as the first obstacle. The mirage mutters that when the water rises, the fog will thicken until the flowers are visible. Bai equips himself with bio-gloves, sensing danger. The knife flying at him is so powerful that it sticks into his shield. The sword disappears, and Meng Meng becomes alarmed at Bai's condition. Chu warns that even with his ability, he cannot detect danger. The Taoist suggests activating the talisman to reveal the location. Chu raises the golden light protective talisman into the air. There is a feeling that something is approaching from the east. The sword appears again and slams into the rock above the people. Bai sees how strong it is. The Taoist shouts in fear for Bai to be careful, as the shield is no longer working. The golden shield shatters, and Chen calmly picks up the sword, to the delight of the others. The boys ask one after another whether the weapon has self-awareness and why it didn't resist. Bai shows the characteristics of the sword spirit to the others. It turns out to be of the water element, and is strong in fog and water. Chu understood why that woodcutter muttered those words, because in the fog, the sword was 5 times stronger than its original level. Chen assumes that the sword spirit would be more effective in Chu's hands, but right now, he is the one who controls it. Chu says he wants to get closer to the sword himself and develop its spirit. Meng Meng believes that since the obstacles will be related to the elements, then they need to collect the 5 sword spirits. Bai remembers that he can only control up to 3 items of a level lower than his, but thinks he can collect them all. He suggests continuing on our way, now that we have dealt with the danger. Chu and his friend discuss how success awaits them in the dungeon with Bai, and the books and equipment from Raven were for preparation. The fog clears, meaning the first obstacle has been overcome. Suddenly, Chu asks everyone to look back in surprise. Everyone turns around and sees the same woodcutter again, muttering the same thing as before. The trees and grasses of the forest become frightening and begin to move. Bai stands at the ready and is excited about the upcoming team battle. Trees and bushes are moving closer to people. Bai says excitedly that he likes to go straight into battle. The guys reason that since there are a lot of grass monsters on this level, the sword must be hidden there too. While they were thinking, they didn't even notice how Chen had already chopped down all the revived plants and obtained the tree sword. He studies the characteristics by which this sword can attack from a hidden plant ambush. Meng Meng calls the confused guys to hurry after them with Bai. The guys are confused and wonder why they are needed here at all. They walk carefully along the mountain following the mirage of the woodcutter. Suddenly, rocks from above cover the entire path ahead so that they cannot go further. Meng Meng stops you from using the golden light talisman and suggests that you take glasses instead. The girl explains that these objects were created by her consciousness as temporary protection. Chen praises her for her resourcefulness, as now she doesn't have to block her vision and doesn't let sand and dust do any harm. Another rockfall carries Chu and Bei down with it. Meng Meng and Taoist look down and try to shout to them. The sandstorm makes it impossible to see which way the boys fell. Meng Meng is going to check by detection. Suddenly, Bai jumps out of the tornado and carries Chu. Chen was worried that his air thrust abilities were working very poorly in the dust. The Taoist tries to figure out how to avoid being pulled into the abyss by the spirit of the rock sword. The sandstorm blocks detection, making it impossible to predict an attack. Bai adds that a couple of seconds before the rock attacks, a loud vibration is heard and one must concentrate on it. Chu admires Chen's intelligence. Bai asks the others to stay put and wait for the attack, while he himself is going to move further up the stairs. The boys readily accept the order. Another collapse occurs, and all 4 run up the path. The attack subsides, and Chen urges his friends to complete the level as quickly as possible. Meng Meng is surprised that Bai doesn't want to get the Earth Sword, which is clearly here. The Taoist explains that the Sword of the Earth only harms the other swords of the elements. Chen nods and adds that he can only control 3, so he needs a gold or fire one. Soon they see the woodcutter again, who adds to his words about the unbearable heat. The heat dries out the boys. Chu thinks that this is a fire sword, and it is the most insidious. Meng suffers from dehydration because even sweat evaporates. Bai reassures his fellow travelers that the fire sword must have another form. There must be a lot of fuel to create intense heat. Chen answers the girl's question by saying that he knows when the fire spirit will appear from the woodcutter's words about weakness and dizziness. A sword flies from the sky straight at the dehydrated assistant. Bai catches him a few centimeters from his friend's face. The guy thinks that the journey is over and takes the guys to replenish their water balance. The woodcutter appears again, this time saying that the head and body will not be united after the golden light. Bai is already ready to let his anger be vented through the sword of fire in order to defeat the golden sword spirit. At the pass, the guys find a battle arena and think that the golden sword is at the top. In the center stands a normal sword, without any hardening or polishing. They do not believe that it is the source of the flash. Chen asks not to think too much. He drops the whips and attacks the sword. After a few strong blows, the sword is restored. Bai understands and sorts his trophy swords. He releases his fighting fists and prepares to deflect the weapon flying at him. He tries a few tricks with attributes, testing his versions. At one point, he slams a golden sword into the arena with a fist of fury. While he fights, the others discuss how the sword is infinitely restored. Bai grabs the sword and sees that it is as thin as a sheet, but with enormous power. The guy calculates the characteristics of the golden sword spirit. He tries to bend the weapon in half. The sword breaks with a crunch and gives Bai a lot of experience points. Chen is glad he didn't take the sword due to his lack of confidence in its reliability. The boys see the woodcutter again. He mutters that after passing through the 5 elements, there remains an endless road to the Tao. That one cannot climb further if there is no fortitude, because the right road will not appear before them. As he leaves on the path, he whispers that it is better to return than to seek immortality. Meng is worried that the woodcutter is near them, and Bai is unhappy with his words. Chen tells Chu to go ahead on the long road. Chu and the Taoist begin to argue over whose heart is more steadfast, so that the road can open. Chen suggests that the Taoist can explain the appearance of the woodcutter through insight. Bai himself suggests that this lumberjack is deliberately misleading travelers by pointing them to the wrong path. As the woodcutter passed by Bai, he felt a chill, a hint that the mirage would kill those who came down from the mountain. These words send Chu into a panic. After a few hours, they receive passage through Shushan and golden balls descend from the sky. These are Shushano tokens as a bonus for winning for all participants. Afterwards, a chest appears in front of them with a reward for all of them, and the level is announced to be closed forever. Tokens turn out to be very useful cards, giving access to Shushan many levels ahead. Bai thinks that he will return to Shushan after receiving more important quests and moving to the next level. Chu offers Bai to choose the reward first. After Bai, he also gives way to Meng. He himself is happy with the token. Later, Chen is lounging on a bed in a room in the villa district. Translucent girls hover over him, calling him a weakling for resting in the middle of the day. Bai rises up and besieges the spirits, saying that they will not win even if they take form. The guy mentions that he just received a book on secret world skills, and if they knock him down, they will get it. The girls find themselves on the floor, unable to move. Chen is glad that he didn't even have to resist to achieve this. One of the girls asks if he likes anyone or if he is always careful with people. He simply replies that he controls his power, but for their efforts he gives them a book to throw on the floor. The book passes through their hands and falls. The girl smiles nervously, asking to wait until she is fully recovered. Bai leaves the book with them and is about to leave. The girl reminds him that he promised to take them to river. The guy promises later when he sorts out important matters. The girls smile sweetly and promise to wait for their little brother. Chen takes out the demon hunting quest scroll and thinks it's time to retrieve the dangerous scroll from the abyss. Moreover, if he doesn't complete Ledoux's task, he will be stuck on the 10th level forever. Chen recalls that when he first received the scroll, he didn't think he would want to move on from it. But now there are no other ways to the coveted dangerous scroll, so we need to get started. Upon arriving at the first level of the abyss, Baya is noticed by devils. The guy feels at home here, since in his past life he often descended into the abyss, hunting demons. He immediately pierces 3 demons out of the given 100 with his swords. The quest states that after defeating the required number of demons, he will leave the abyss, so he decides to take his time. The goal of Bei is to challenge, not to beat it quickly. A day later, the guy gets angry that he can't complete the task. There are too many demons, and they only know how to chase. As soon as he runs away from one party, others appear. He sees the well of the abyss erupting. The explosion does not spoil the test, but strengthens all demons. He spews out thousands of new demon eggs. Chen can't slow down without attacking him. He understands that if he accidentally kills everyone and completes the task early, he will be thrown out of the abyss. He dodges a sword that suddenly flies at him. One of the demons approaches the weapon, ready to attack dinner. This is a high-level demon and speaks quite intelligently to Bai. Chen realizes that this is a pure-blooded, profound level demon that shouldn't be at the first level. To the caustic insults, Bai replies that he did not run away from the lower demons out of cowardice. The monster gives the man an interested response while preparing for dinner. Chen strikes the demon with his swords, much to the creature's surprise. The monster falls to the ground with a crash, and Bai replies that he has already destroyed the other species. New demons immediately begin to hatch from the eggs, and the guy realizes that he has to leave. After 6 days, Chen finally reaches the Well of the Abyss. From his past life, he remembers that this is a safe place to rest and gain strength. The bag and storage are filled with pure demon potions that Chen plans to feed to the mask. He does not immediately notice that a demon is approaching him, interested in a real person. The high-level fish demon says that he didn't believe it when the servant said about the man heading to the well, who also killed all types of demons except the lower ones. Bei is puzzled, because the demon fish shouldn't appear on the first level. He calmly asks if the dangerous ones often rise to watch the eruption. The demon says that he is a prince and has come down specifically to finish off Bai. He swings his trident and creates waves of water, while Bai surrounds himself with hellish flames. In demonic language, the guy asks what kind of demon he is and from which circle of hell. In response, it thunders that the creature is the offspring of the ruler of the 17th circle. He takes off and mocks Bai's hellfire, claiming that he has already wet himself. Chen dodges the trident and causes flesh to harden. The demon does not expect a man in magic gloves to attack him. The guy points 3 swords at the defeated demon, continuing to comment. On the 50th circle, the abilities begin to melt away, and Bai can barely cope with the power of the local demons. He decides to exchange blows, since he still couldn't figure out the monster's vulnerable point. They fight knife against knife. The demon laughs at the man's resistance and launches his weapon at him. It pierces Chen through and through, and the boy falls. Bai is defeated and lies on the ground, under the demon's praise and reproaches for his self-confidence. The monster says that he is under the protection of the abyss, and leaves the defeated Bai. The guy quietly analyzes the condition, and then replies that he is celebrating too early. Chen lunges at the demon from behind and tears out chunks of its flesh from both sides. The creature cannot understand how this was possible and begins to disintegrate. The system notifies the guy that the 66th circle has been completed, and he can choose a time for recovery. Bai explains to the already dissolved demon how he outwitted him. Later, Chen stands before the entrance to the 100th circle, where the opponent will be the fallen swordsman Gilbert, without any special conditions. Bai is puzzled that this is the weakest of the fallen, and why he hasn't appeared yet. He muses that due to the chaos of demon connections, it is entirely possible that a weak fallen demon became a lord. While the guy is thinking about how to track down the hidden demon, the monster silently appears from his shadow. Small in stature, he jumps on Bai from behind with a weapon at the ready. Bai didn't even have time to understand how his head was instantly cut off. As it turns out, he was whole, but on the first lap. He is immediately attacked by a lower demon lord, and Bai simply explodes with indignation and anger. All he can think about is that if he hadn't activated the return to the past, he would be dead. He quickly deals with the attacker and asks him who is the ruler of the 100th circle. The creature snorts and says that he wouldn't have told you even if he knew. The first lap is over, and Chen is thinking of another tactic to find out more about the 100th lap. On the 72nd circle, Bai reflects that another weak demon was simply lucky to become the ruler of this circle. The defeated creature mocks that man will fall at the hands of a fallen demon. Bai lures out information by saying that there are no more fallen lords left in the depths of the abyss. It works, and the demon says that on the 100th circle, Gilbert became a swordsman in the body of a fallen one and killed the archdemon himself. Chen finally kills the creature, having obtained what he wanted to know. Later, Bai is back on the 100th lap, going over new information about Gilbert, and realizes that he is attacking from the shadows. He believes that he won't be able to stand up to a swordsman, but he can stand up to a fallen demon. He rushes through the area, trying to avoid shadows and not stop, spraying the virus as he goes. It turns out that if Gilbert follows him, he will definitely get infected. This proves too difficult to concentrate. Suddenly, Baya is blinded by a bright light, a trick of the demon. Gilbert appears and Chen attacks with swords. The demon jumps back and admits defeat. He explains this by the limitations of his power and infection with the virus. Gilbert invites Bai to return to the 100th circle for battle after the man passes the test. Chen promises to win. The system writes that the 100th circle has been completed. He also promises to fight Gilbert again. On the 200th circle of the abyss, Bai finds himself in a magnificent palace, to the fallen demon Lady Elmia. He asks her if the battle of the test will begin here. She chuckles that cleaning the palace is too tiring. Elmia is going to just let Bai go further, but she is curious about something. The guy sits down at the table that appears and asks with interest what she needs. She wonders how Chen was able to get to 200, even after winning with Gilbert. After all, there were more difficult demons on the levels after him. Bai stops next to the chair and says that he cannot reveal his trump card. Elmia says she's bored, so if he drinks with her and tells her how he did the laps, she'll skip ahead. Chen pours wine into a glass and asks which circle Elmia wants to hear about. The demon thinks and asks about the vile creature from the 105th circle. Chen recalls the alien demon Cerubes, a level 10 demon. This demon was like a meat slurry that spread across the floor, and as soon as you touched it, it would begin to devour you. Chen's reaction was too slow to keep up with the demon's absorption of him. Elmia asks how he managed to win. Bai says that since he wanted to eat, the man fed him. The guy fed the demon 100 hands until he became poisoned and began to rot. She smirks that the man defeated Cerubes with surprising ease. Bai laughs that it is not easy and very painful to tear his hands away from himself. Then the demon asks to tell about the old man Tsigu, who was most likely hiding in the sea. Bai recalls defeating this demon with the trident he had previously taken from the fish demon. Elmia praises the guy for his dexterity and asks about the girl from the 153rd circle. She's talking about the lava demon Hartley. Chen admits that Hartley was incredibly strong and killed him time after time. Its heat killed the virus, and the lava body was almost immune to attacks. When she was injured, she would dive into the lava, and it would heal her. Chen fought for 5 days until he filled the lava pool, exhausting her ardor. Bai noted that Hartley proved to be the toughest competitor over the entire 200 laps. Elmia says that it wasn't any easier at 186, but Bai doesn't even want to remember. As the Queen of Filth Omandi spreads in a stinking pit, Chen speaks of her as the most disgusting thing in the entire abyss, basking in a pit of rotting corpses and filth. He remembers the stench and loses his appetite for wine. The demon mentions that Omandi is not very strong, but none of the demons want her territory. She also notices that Bai hasn't taken a single sip during the entire conversation. Chen confirms, adding that drinking the fallen angel's wine is comparable to death. He recalls that he once fell for this and died. Elmia confirms his suspicions and regrets that she was unable to kill Chen without any effort. Then Bai stands up and challenges the demon to a fight. Elmia refuses and lazily sprawls in the chair. The guy is perplexed. She lets Bai go, saying that she wants to sleep. The demon mentions that there are those ahead that he cannot defeat. Chen thoughtfully repeats Elmia's words about the 6 gods ahead. He leaves the 200th circle, thinking that the hourglass may not save him from the gods. In the restroom, Chen thinks about how each god owns the laws of the universe. The guy hopes that their power will not erase or instantly destroy him. Bai relies on the power of the hourglass to roll back time when defeated. At the 235th circle, Baiyu is confronted by the demon of the eyes of the abyss, Salisbury, who forces him to plunge into eternal sleep. Chen is immobilized and pressed against a rock, looking into the distance with a smile. Salisbury squints his one eye and wonders what kind of dreams the man is seeing. At this time in Bai's fantasy, a beautiful elf kneels and asks to accept her oath of allegiance. In this sweet dream, Bai sits on a throne, surrounded by the most beautiful and powerful girls. The elf raises her beautiful eyes and swears to be a slave, a toy, a servant. Chen predatorily asks if she is ready to give him her power and die. The girl tries to convince him of her fidelity with tears. Bai smiles and says that he has figured her out, that she has no drop of devotion or loyalty, but only a thirst to survive. However, he offers to leave her life, and the girl promises to do anything. Chen hands the girl a chain with a collar and orders her to tie herself to the gate and become a chained dog. The girl lowers her head in confusion. Bai grins and clarifies that she doesn't want to, but the girl puts on the collar and says she is ready. Salisbury watches as Chen talks in his sleep. He notes quite well that the man knows his way around games. The demon promises that once he absorbs Bai's soul, he will be able to enjoy his fantasies forever. Suddenly, a system prompt appears that you need to break out of the circle's illusions, and 3 swords fly at the demon. Chen gets up and says that he doesn't want to stay in dreams forever. Salisbury is puzzled as to when the man was able to emerge from his illusions without being noticed. Bai simply explains that in the trial, the demon is only level 10 and cannot use all of its true power, and the souls of swords, which have their own minds, help them get out. Salisbury doesn't understand why the man didn't kill him right away, but decided to play. Chen didn't intend to kill him, but only wanted to take a rest after 200 laps. Hundreds of circles and thousands of rollbacks and defeats can restore the body and mind. However, pressure and confusion remain. Without this respite, Bai would have gone crazy, so he thanks the demon. Salisbury is shocked and annoyed that the guy was just relaxing in his illusion. He leaves, warning that there are a few battles left. To Bai's question, the demon replies that there are just under 300 circles left until the end, but most of them are empty. Chen realizes that the abyss is calling upon the past rulers to fight him. Salisbury mentions that some of the circles ahead were destroyed in battles and are therefore empty. In the depths, sometimes the battle is so powerful that it destroys several circles at once. Bai thanks the demon and promises to visit him if he passes the test. A pleased Salisbury promises in that case to show the most perfect illusion, from which he will not let the guy out. This time, Bai doesn't take time to recover after this lap and is ready for battle. Chen rushes through one destroyed circle after another. Finally, he moves on to the 279th circle and counts a total of 44 destroyed ones. On the new round, the task becomes to go through the labyrinth and defeat Baphomet, the bull demon. Bai remembers how Elmia spoke about him. He is one of the gods. Unlike the 200 circles, this is where the hardest part begins. And this god attacks right in the labyrinth. At this moment, a giant demon bull appears right behind Bai. He attacks immediately, and Chen barely has time to put up his shield. Using artifacts and abilities, Bai defeats the bull and it collapses to the floor. Chen tries to figure out if he is dead. With surprise, he notices that the demon's body sinks into the floor, and, not having time, the guy just hits the floor with his fist. Chen wonders if it was a double meant to intimidate him, and realizes that he has little information about this demon. After 10 minutes of wandering through the maze, Bai spots him again, hiding behind a column. They collide head-on, and the guy pushes the demon away by the horns. The monster flies away again, and Chen sees that this one is only level 2. In the end, he still defeats the demon with spikes from the ground, and calculates that before this there was a first-level demon. Afterwards, you come across Baphomets of the 3rd and 4th levels, which indicates an increase depending on the progress in the labyrinth. On the 5th level bull, Chen notices with apprehension that this one is almost as strong, and there are still 5 more to go. The 7th Baphomet amazes with its height and strength. Bai can barely cope. It's just huge, it's rushing straight at the guy. Due to fatigue, he can no longer read the characteristics, but in battle, he senses that the demon's strength is already twice as strong as his. The bull, with incredible force, knocks everything down with its head. Chen is nervous that the power is greater and the virus will take too long to infect him. He needs to find more information about this demon to win. He rolls back to the beginning and decides to try not to kill low-level demons. From the 1st level, he simply runs away. He approaches the place where the 2nd-level demon should appear. Surprisingly, there is no one there, and Chen rushes on, runs past the meeting place with the 7th level, and ends up where he has never been. He can't believe that everything is as simple as just not killing the 1st level. As confirmation, a giant Baphomet materializes behind him. Bai barely manages to use the rollback, and is shocked to remember the advantage of that demon. He tries to catch his breath, thinking this one was level 8 or higher. Here he realizes that there is only one demon in the labyrinth, who simply caught up with him. If you kill him at the beginning, he will respawn stronger. But if you don't kill him, he will pursue you. At first he is weak, but the further into the labyrinth he goes, the stronger he becomes. The characteristics are growing, and it is only a matter of time before you catch up. Bai thinks that he could try to infect him with a virus, but with each level the demon will have a surge in strength. He calls the system to check if he has enough points to improve the ability. He discovers an overlooked ability of the mindworm that infects the victim's mind. He confidently walks towards the entrance, hoping that the negativity and mental breakdowns are definitely suppressing Baphomet's battle-thirst hormone. Later, Chen grabs a 1st-level demon and infects it. Afterwards, he hurries to the place where the 2nd level appears. Bai is already victoriously dragging the demon by the horns across the floor. Suddenly, Baphomet jumps up and triples his hormone of thirst for a gladiator fight. But the worm acts, weakening all his buffs and removals of restrictions. The guy successfully drags the demon into the central arena of the labyrinth. He throws Baphomet into the air when he levels up to deal his next blow. With a huge knife in his hand, the guy jumps up to attack. The demon suddenly becomes cheerful and repels the attack. Chen realized with fear that at level 10, his stats had jumped sharply. He sees numbers and levels that have skyrocketed, but the infection still attacks the lungs. With the help of the invincible divine body, the demon's strength once again surpassed Bai's. Suddenly, Baphomet sits up and speaks, asking why they were fighting at all. He says that battles are boring and meaningless, and the worm affects his apathy and doubt itself. Chen mentally praises the worm and offers the demon to let him pass further. The demon is busy beating himself up and says he doesn't care. He lies on the floor and whines about how his whole life is a waste. Chen realizes that it was the demon who destroyed those empty circles and offers to free him. But to the guy's surprise, Baphomet says that he cannot be killed here. He explains that in this arena, both demons and humans can be reborn infinitely. He goes on to say that true victory is admitting defeat and asks if he seems crazy. Bai agrees, but worries that if he were to be revived without the infection, everything would end quickly. The demon gives in, lets Chen pass further, planning to lie down and think about the meaning of life. In the resting space, Bai thought with fear that the demon in the arena already had stats 6 times greater than his. If the first god turned out to be so complex, what will the next ones be like? In the center of the 350th circle, on the largest of the many islands, an eye rises. Bai looks around, thinking that with the worm he hardly had to use any more rollbacks. A snake demon, a world eater with 10 heads. Winifred appears, several heads must be defeated. Chen is already preparing to die a couple of times, since he knows almost nothing about the 9-headed Hydra. The 9th head thinks about what task to give the person. Along the way, they begin to exchange flattering compliments. After Bai says how beautiful and seductive she is, the head declares the test passed. Under her adoration, Chen thanks the beautiful and charming lady. She quite awakens the 8th head, whose turn it is to test the man. The 8th lazily asks how much 1 + 1 is, and having received the answer, lets the guy go further. Chen notices that this Hydra looks like a fallen one from the 200th circle. The 7th head denies violence and thinks about what to wish for more. Interestingly, she is repelled by the 6th and 5th, blazing with ice and fire, and the 7th gives in. They appear to be the eaters and masters of water and fire. Bai innocently asks what their test is. They begin to argue among themselves about which is stronger, fire or water, and ask Chen to judge. The trap of the task is to support each head and make each one admit its weakness. Bai is nervous because failure means death, and this question cannot be answered. Both begin to press in their direction and demand an answer. Water proves that it extinguishes fire, and fire proves that it evaporates water, and is therefore stronger. Bai decides to cut off one of the heads to break the deadlock. The guy calls for a knife in his hand, and rushes towards the frightened cries of the snakes. The other 2 heads laugh at the brothers, noticing that the guy is rightly chopping them down, because they have come up with an unsolvable problem. The 6th one grumbles that their tasks are quite easy. The 5th one screams that with such questions a person will answer incorrectly in any case. Then both admit the test has been passed and pass, but ask who, in his opinion, is stronger. Chen wonders hard how childish these eaters are. He suggests that they fight each other to test it. The snakes indignantly remind that they are one whole, so the battle is comparable to suicide. They start arguing among themselves again about who would kill whom first. Bai reminds them that they are just projections here, so they can find out right now. He provokes them by saying that the guy doesn't know them, and they can sort things out once and for all. The brothers happily agree and begin to argue again. The first one intervenes harshly, and the brothers become quiet. The 4th says that his task is simple, and that he was born in space, wandering among the stars. However, he has never been to the blue star and asks Bai to tell him about it. 7 intervenes and asks to talk about the scenery and delicious food, calling it his test. Chen finds himself surrounded by the 4th, 7th, and 2nd. The 2nd one joins in and, as a test, asks to talk about philosophers, ideas, and thinkers. The 3rd one starts to freak out because of long conversations. He demands to start himself, so as not to listen to their boring chatter. The head opens its mouth and from it flies a black ball surrounded by ominous energy. He declares this to be the first self-made skill after reaching level 10 power, and demands to be caught. Bai admired the god's skill. He watches this ball and decides to try to catch it with telekinesis. The ball begins to grow. The guy cannot catch it mentally, and he sees its power of devouring. The snake grins that this is only the first stage of devouring. Chen tries to defend himself with his shield. The 2nd and 3rd comment on Bai's actions. The 3rd adds that when the devourer's energy reaches its limit, the skill explodes. Chen covers himself in fear, and an explosion passes through, dealing 3 times the damage he absorbed. 9th excitedly asks the brothers if they have blown the man to pieces. She is relieved to see Chen, and the guy says that he is not so easy to finish off, and that he passed the test. But the 3rd snake releases another black ball, an improved one. The 2nd one stops him, saying that his test is over, and it is time for his task. The 2nd turns to Bai Yu and demands a story about human philosophies. The others also join in, demanding to be told what interests them. After some time, all 3 snakes accept the test. Chen asks about the final test. The 1st head says that if a man survives the battle of his 2 brothers, then the circle is completed. Bai replies that the circle is huge, and there is a lot of space. The guy thinks about the ease of the tests, whether it was laziness or there was a catch. The snakes gather for a meeting, where the 5th one speaks of his victory. The 6th one retorts that he only defeated him at the 10th level. The 5th one mocks his brother. The 3rd one shouts at the snakes to calm them down. He also accuses the other 2 brothers of helping the man. The 4th one explains that he helped the guy specifically for profit and investment. Since Bai has defeated Baphomet, he has a chance to pass the test of the Abyss and become its ruler. The 2nd confirms and says how much benefit the Lord Devourer will bring, who is obliged to them. The 3rd doubts that the guy will pass, since on the 375th circle, there is a demon with the right to kill. Therefore, the snake is sure that the man will not be able to pass. At the circle they were talking about, Bai receives information about the god of murder and jackals, Yi Nogu, and thinks there might be problems. He walks and thinks that he is worst at dealing with invisible killers. Suddenly a vine wraps around his leg and pulls it down. Only after cutting off the trap with a knife does he immediately land on an obstacle with sharp spikes and jump over it. As soon as he stops, a hunting net flies down on him from above. He cuts the trap and sees a powerful explosion nearby. He thinks with annoyance that he hasn't met the main one yet, but has already used redding the state. His hands are tied on all sides by strong blades of grass. Chen thinks in a panic about how many traps there are here. Bai changes and creates a powerful protective field around himself that breaks all bonds. He mutters irritably that this demon is not the god of jackals, but the god of traps. He furiously shouts that the ruler is a vile and disgusting guy. Suddenly, someone behind his back thanks him for the compliment. There is no one there. Bai turns on his thermal vision and sees himself being attacked from above. The guy is torn apart by claws. He rolls back into the past and is angry that the god has more strength, traps, and super speed. Once back at this level, he decides to release the virus early. If Yanogu becomes infected, he can be tracked using viral vision. He also releases his claws in advance to set traps, and immediately a hail of stones falls on him. Bai is in a panic from the number of different death traps. There are hundreds of traps within a dozen meters, and not one is repeated. A ghostly voice is heard behind him, saying that the poison can be tolerated. But the forest of traps took a lot of work. Immediately, Chen dies again and is thrown back into the past again. Bai is in despair. He realizes that Yanogu knows everything, as if he was with him from the very beginning. After some time, the jackal god again rips the guy's guts out, and he returns to the past for the 5th time. After the 8th return, Chen increasingly understands how much the god's power surpasses his own. He cautiously steps back into the forest of deadly traps, knowing that one wrong step is all it takes. A virus would be a great solution. But as soon as the jackal senses the infection, he immediately finishes off the guy. The mental worm, on the contrary, makes God more impatient. He quickly rushes through the forest, preparing to release the flu virus and worm as he goes. Seeing how the jackal fights off his own traps, Bai guesses that this will allow him to buy time. It works. He rushes on, making his way past traps as he goes, in order to have time to reduce the god's power to his level. The jackal is following very closely, and he is very angry. Finally, the jackal catches up with and kills the guy, who returns for the 10th time. Chen is not upset because the more times he tries, the further he gets. The number of returns reaches 15, and up to 23. Returning once again, Chen becomes increasingly adept at avoiding traps, which greatly angers the god. Once again, the jackal attacks the guy with a battle cry. Bai smirks as the enemy charges straight into his traps. They come face to face. Bai ends up wounded, because the god's power is much greater than his. The jackal falls into his traps and becomes weakened. Bai takes advantage of the opportunity and pierces the god with the tip. Soon the exhausted, wounded guy thinks with relief that he won. The system confirms that this circle has been completed, and gives time for recovery. Even though the god was still stronger than Chen in the last minutes, he was no pro in open combat. Bai looks with regret at the equipment, of which almost nothing remains. However, thoughts still go to the fact that 3 of the 6 gods remain. He remembers that among them there must be the queen of the succubi, Mekansmut. She must be somewhere around the 400th circle, and even Helros was afraid of her. But on the 400th, there is the soul carrier, Gabur, who must be found among the undead and killed. Bai happily puts on his gloves and prepares for the endless army of undead. The guy thinks that this will be the easiest circle after the snakes, and releases the souls of swords into the air. Bai watches as the swords destroy the undead and remembers the siege of the city. He summons hammer-like hands and strikes the ground, destroying everything around him. Finally, he finds Gabur, who immediately begins to attack the guy. Bai realizes that mental power cannot cope with the god's telekinetic spear and thinks about how to kill him faster. He tries to go straight ahead and hits Gabur right in the torso. God is wounded and wonders how the guy figured him out. Chen releases an energy ball and aims it at the god. The defeated Gabur respectfully praises the guy for how he, without having great strength, wins at the last moment. Chen smirked, remembering that he had already been defeated by the god twice, on 2 rollbacks of this circle. He thanks Gabur for the compliment and gets ready to leave. God wheezes that he will wait for him on this circle for a conversation. The 437th circle, Queen of Succubi and Pleasures. Mekansmut welcomes the boy. Bai is completely enchanted by her beauty. He pulls himself together in time and shakes off the obsession. We must try not to fall for the succubus's tricks. The queen tries to persuade the guy with words to reveal to her all his desires and nature. Chen doesn't move from his place, and the queen is about to approach him herself. The queen says with pleasure that she feels all his desires. She pretends to worry about his comfort, but pleased with his appearance, offers to become her pet. Mekansmut lists what he must do to become an obedient animal and receive rewards. She is convinced that he is the same lustful male as everyone else. Bai is unable to stay on his feet and practically kneels before the goddess. Later, Bai tells Helros that her desire control method works. He prepared for the meeting with the succubus. The demoness says that there is one story about this queen of the abyss. When Mechensmoot received the power of desires, her favorite did everything she told him to. Unconscious submission made her disillusioned with men. From then on, whenever she met men she liked, she would turn on all her charms. But few people know about the results of this. She warns that if Bai collides with her, something funny will happen, because he will not break. The guy says he will only be loyal to the strong, like Helros. Well, that was of course a lie. They both soared into the sky. She believed that a man could not defeat her, and only on his knees could he experience pleasure at her feet. But he thought differently, either victory or death. She wondered how long he could hold out. The whip squeezed his shoulders hard, and it tasted good. It was a punishment of passion, reinforced by the right of desire. Chen Bai decided to give her 1 point at the start. He waited for her to show him more. But it seems that his blood has not all gone down yet, since he had such a hard tongue. She bit his lips, adding some pepper to make you more talkative. Mangacaped was a goddess after all, and if he encountered her, he would hardly be able to resist absolute power and her rights. The threads of reason did not necessarily have to deadly fetter instincts, and sometimes it was useful to give them a little freedom. The main thing was to be able to control them in the end. He was ready because the thirst for the virus to reproduce is the most uncontrollable. Chen Bai continued to fight and broke the spell of the whip. And even completely bewitched, he still pushed ahead. His body was covered with hard thorns and his eyes were burning. He grabbed her from behind and caused her severe pain. It seemed like all that was left now was to kill him. But he really didn't want to do this. He was the first one who didn't fall under this spell. Seeing that she had stopped, he did not stand on ceremony. But it was just a projection, and it was curious to see what he would do if he completely lost his mind. This battle lasted 3 days. Chen Bai chose 1 hour to recover. Now his collection included a minotaur, a hydra, an undead jackal, and a Mechensmoot. All 5 of these gods had weaknesses that he exploited to win. Now everyone was waiting for orders from the queen. Mechensmoot didn't expect her projection to encounter such a busy matter. Now she knew what it was like to be defeated. And I wondered if they would go to the 500th circle and kill this guy. If he passes the test of the abyss and reaches the level of gods, then she will be able to feel this feeling again. But she was no opponent of the Lord of Eternal Night. Chen Bai finally made it to her, and after reaching the final barrier, his exploits would become legendary. Agaris stood before him and said that he was not destined to become a legend. Apparently his path would end here. But these words didn't have much meaning to Chen Bai. There was a flu pneumonia virus and a mental worm around him. But thermal vision and mental perception could not penetrate this darkness. And it looks like I'll have to die more than once. The 500th circle had been completed, and Chen Bai couldn't understand why. He looked down on him and expected many meetings. Chen Bai couldn't understand what you meant here and why you missed him. He didn't say anything directly, and it was unclear what he meant, and the transition to a new level was confirmed. 6 gods were completed, and it was unclear how many levels would disappear this time. This was the 600th circle of the abyss. The current ruler was absent, and Satan was waiting on this level. He did not expect that one day his consciousness would awaken in the depths of the abyss, and this destructive one with its 600 circles has still not disappeared. It's all because someone passed the test and got here. Satan asked the name of the man with such amazing power. Chen Bai thought that Satan was a real chatterbox, and if his own body had not perished, he would have been waiting for him somewhere else with impatience and offered to sit down and chat. Chen Bai was surprised by his words about the death of the body. Satan asked him to show how he got here, and Chen Bai used the powers of hell, but apparently he forgot that Satan was the ruler of hell, and Chen Bai couldn't move, and the hellish fire couldn't be quelled. In order not to burn in the hellish flames, the only thing left was to dodge, and using fire meant falling under the control of Satan. But suddenly Satan asked him about cooperation. Chen Bai clarified that burning in fire is that very cooperation. Satan apologized for the mistake. As soon as the fire died down, Chen Bai asked what kind of cooperation he was proposing. Satan's true body perished, but the test of the abyss revived him, which means he was just a projection. But the abyss created projections, preserving the life imprints of all its creatures. If this imprint is preserved and taken out, then Satan will be able to be truly reborn. But what was the price? Chen Bai was offered to carry Satan out of the abyss, and no payment would be required, and as a reward he would receive a part of the hellish heritage. He was not an idiot. There could not be such a benefit without risk. And how was he supposed to do it anyway? And Satan handed him a ring in which his life imprint would be hidden, and Chen Bai was offered to carry it out of the abyss. And as soon as he brings out Satan, this thing will become his. And only after taking it in his hands did Chen Bai realize that this was the ring of the king of hell, Solomon. And now he knew for sure that Satan cannot be trusted, and it was a trap. Chen Bai put the ring on his finger. But nothing happened, and he thought that the ring was a fake, but the ring was simply not completely his yet. But Satan was only a shadow born from the imprint of life, and this ring was the only one he had. But Chenbai didn't believe him. But as long as there was even a drop of hellish power inside him, he could not resist Satan. And he asked what would happen if they refused this cooperation. Refusal would result in murder. But he was ready to hang around here forever until someone else willing to cooperate appeared. But he didn't want to waste time forever, so he agreed. Now the 600th circle of the abyss had been passed, and Chenbai arrived in a new place, and there was a virtual scroll in front of him. It seems like he needed time to form, and for now, he decided to get himself in order. The condition was normal, and the return to the past was also normal. With the ring on his hand, he left the 600th circle, and now Satan could come out. Pointing to the scroll, Satan said that this is the power of the abyss, a scroll of transition to the ruler of the abyss, and the name of Chenbai will be sung in myriad worlds, for he completed the test that even the gods could not pass. But Chenbai objected because he hadn't really defeated him. But defeating Meekensmut was already a great feat, and he realized that Agaris was his subordinate on the 500th circle. And indeed, among the 72 pillars of demons, the second most important was Agaris. Chenbai asked if their cooperation could now be considered complete, but there is still one step left. After all, he has not yet received the ring and tasted the hellish legacy. He didn't believe that all this would work out, but the devil gave his word. With sparkling eyes, he whispered that his body would fully enjoy this, and not only this, because he wanted to use his body to enter the higher spheres. Now he realized that Satan's goal was to stroke his soul and take possession of his body. He was almost there. This would be his new beginning to rule myriad worlds. Chenbai's soul was defenseless against him. After all, this was the soul of a simple man, but Chenbai felt that his soul was okay. Apparently it was all about the hourglass of time associated with the soul, and Satan failed. But it was not clear whether he was completely destroyed. Addressing the ring, Chenbai asked if Satan was okay, and when he would ascend to the world throne with his body, but it was better not to guess whether Satan was finally dead. In any case, the ring was the receptacle of his soul, and he could not give in to greed. He had to destroy it to be sure. Well, the attributes of this ring were not unlocked. It was cheap and it wasn't a pity to destroy it. Well, suddenly Satan from the ring asked to agree on everything in a good way, calling Chenbai his superiority. But he didn't understand what he wanted to talk about. Satan showered him with compliments. He was ready to do anything just so that he would give him life. But Chen knew that Satan was not someone to be trusted, and told him to offer something worthwhile. But she stood up, pressed on pity, and told him that his hellish legacy really does exist. But for Chenbai, these were all empty promises. Satan kept trying to convince me that he was telling the truth. But he was not convinced and went to rest in the inventory. But Satan kept trying to convince him to take him with him. But the inventory wouldn't let Satan pull off any tricks, so he had no choice. The result was success and a second SSS rank scroll, but the inventory was not so reliable, and it was better to store the scroll together with the plague of the living in a warehouse. Now all that remains is to summon Leto and complete the quest and receive 2 professions at once. Chenbai was in the first circle of the abyss, and while he was not going to leave her, he decided to call Leto right there. The coin hit the ground and opened a portal. Leto wasn't very happy to find himself in such a hole. His guild had branches in hell, but it was an abyss. No one except demons liked this place. Leto asked why he called him, because the coin is intended for completing investment tasks, and if he used it to ask for help, then he will have to pay for a new one. But Chenbai asked if the contract and rewards for completing the investment task were ready. They have already been approved by the will of the cosmos. Leto asked if he had actually gotten both scrolls, and Chen got them. The first was the power of the plague, which impressed him greatly, and Leto asked to show the second one. But when I saw him, I couldn't believe my eyes. After all, no creature could obtain it, and even Satan failed. But Chenbai was holding this very scroll in his hand. It was the Lord of the Abyss, scroll of transition to the Lord of the Abyss. Chen sensed a killing intent in him, and couldn't believe that Leto wanted to steal the scroll. Chen always performed miracles that Daly did not expect, and now the profession change scroll was his. Leto had just been dying to kill and suddenly calmed down, and he presented Chenbai with an investment contract. It did not have strict conditions about time, place, and type of investment, only about value. And Leto asked to open a branch of the Goblin Guild, to teach demons to trade and show them that deals are the only way to mutual benefit. Chenbai agreed, realizing what kind of game this old cunning fox was playing. The abyss is huge, and there are plenty of rare resources here, and this one deal will be enough for him to get rich. And they shook hands, and Leto asked to use the scroll right now so that he too could see this miracle. And Chenbao used it. Now his limit has been increased to 2 professions, and made the transition, and the well of the abyss began to bubble. The man who used tricks to deprive the gods of the will to fight was shot down, but not everyone agreed with this. But others were glad that the reprimand was from the party, and some were happy that now there would be something to look at, and he considered him a king who had achieved success, and called on him to return. Meanwhile, Chenbai's team was watching the notifications about his transfer. In a fickle amusement park, a giant clown chased Anthony Douglas, trying to kill him, but victory was not his. Anthony Douglas held a scroll in his hand. He wanted to be the first to complete the transition, but Chenbai got ahead of him. He was one step late again. Other team members read the chat, and they discussed Baya's transition. Chenbai's camp was assigned to the Dragon Country, and he confirmed the transition. Now Chenbai had the title of Leader of the World. He was very pleased. Now it's time to look at the abilities and skills of the profession. His profession is the Plague of the Living. The bonuses and attributes were good, but there were only 2 skills. A green sun shone in the abyss, and the demons within a radius of several kilometers were almost dead. Chenbai asked Leto if he was infected, but his mental energy did not yet allow him to control everything within the radius of the Plague Sun, and this skill had to be used with caution. He could not monitor the situation hundreds of meters away, which could easily harm the allies. Now he decided to go to the Lord of the Abyss, but it didn't have any bonuses or attributes. But he did not pay attention to the rights and skills of the profession. The level ceiling here was hundreds higher than elsewhere, and hundreds of large and small powers, and free entry and exit into any layer of the Abyss 9 bloodlines and resurrection no worse than an hourglass. While the acceptance of the Abyss was unclear, everything else was incredibly powerful. Leto offered him a glass of wine in honor of today's trophies, and Chenbai accepted the glass from his hands. He also handed him another interesting thing, a goblin pocket store, and they drank to successful cooperation.